Beneath a shroud of endless ice, there lies a continent that defies time, memory, and explanation. Antarctica. A place of brutal beauty and utter silence, untouched by civilization, yet echoing with secrets the world has never fully understood. For centuries, this frozen wilderness has repelled explorers and enticed the curious, a landscape more alien than familiar, more myth than map. But what if the silence hides something deeper? Satellite anomalies beneath the ice, lost expeditions with no trace, unnatural formations that shouldn't exist in nature, and whispers of ancient structures sealed away for millennia. Each clue, buried beneath miles of ice, raises unsettling questions. What lies below the surface? Who or what was here before us? Science has only scratched the surface. The rest remains buried, cold, and waiting. So sit back, bundle up, and prepare to journey into the heart of the unknown. Because the mysteries of Antarctica aren't just frozen in time, they're still very much alive. Beneath a vast expanse of unbroken white in the most isolated region of the East Antarctic ice sheet lies something extraordinary. A lake. A hidden body of water so deeply buried beneath the ice that sunlight has not touched its surface for over 15 million years. This is Lake Vostok. Situated beneath nearly 2.5 miles of solid ice, Lake Vostok is one of the largest subglacial lakes in the world, roughly the size of Lake Ontario. It lies beneath Russia's Vostok Station, one of the coldest inhabited places on Earth. In 1983, this desolate outpost recorded the lowest natural temperature ever measured, minus 128.6 degrees Fahrenheit. To most, it seems like an uninhabitable wasteland. But under the ice, something stirs. For decades, scientists had suspected the existence of liquid water beneath the Antarctic surface. Radar and seismic readings in the 1970s hinted at an anomaly, an area where radio waves behaved strangely, suggesting the presence of a large, unfrozen reservoir. But it wasn't until the 1990s that the full extent of the lake came into focus. Lake Vostok had been completely sealed off from the atmosphere for millions of years, its waters warmed not by the sun, but by geothermal heat from deep within the Earth. This revelation ignited the imagination of scientists and theorists alike. What could survive in such a place? Could life endure total darkness, crushing pressure, and the complete absence of oxygen? And if so, what kind of life? In 2012, after years of careful planning and environmental debate, Russian scientists finally succeeded in drilling down through the Antarctic ice to reach the lake's surface. The effort was monumental. The risk of contamination was immense. But the reward? A chance to peer into a world untouched since long before humans even existed. When the first samples emerged, they were cautiously analyzed. Most of what was recovered was expected: frozen water, ancient gases, and some signs of microbial life, though even that was met with skepticism. But then, something strange. In 2013, reports surfaced that researchers had identified an unusual DNA sequence in the samples, one that didn't seem to match any known organism. It wasn't just new. It was alien to the databases used to catalog Earth's biodiversity. Initially, some proclaimed the discovery as evidence of an entirely new form of life, a microbial lineage that had evolved in complete isolation, potentially since before the age of the dinosaurs. Others were more cautious. Contamination, they argued, could easily explain the anomalies. The DNA could have come from the drill, from human skin cells, or even from lab equipment. Still, the idea persisted. Could this be a window into an ancient ecosystem, one that evolved along a path completely separate from anything we've known? The debate intensified when a later analysis by a different Russian team claimed to have found no such anomaly in the lake's water. Instead, they said, the samples only contained microbes already known to science, common bacteria like Pseudomonas, found in soil and water all over the world. A mundane answer. A convenient one. But the questions refused to melt away. How could an isolated lake, under miles of sterilizing ice, harbor even familiar microbes? Were these organisms remnants from an ancient time, surviving in stasis for millennia? Or had the drill, despite the team's best efforts, introduced earthbound life into a pristine system? And if the DNA wasn't contaminated, if it truly was unique, then what does that say about Earth's hidden biosphere? Lake Vostok has become a focal point for broader questions about life in extreme environments, not just on Earth, but beyond it. If life can thrive here, in total darkness and isolation, could it also exist beneath the icy crust of Jupiter's moon Europa, or Saturn's Enceladus? NASA and other space agencies have taken a keen interest in Vostok for this reason. It serves as a model, a test bed, for the kind of life that might exist in similar alien oceans. In a way, Antarctica has become Earth's stand-in for the outer solar system. And yet, the mystery remains unresolved. Some fringe theorists have proposed bolder ideas, that Lake Vostok might conceal not just microbes, but something far more complex. They cite magnetic anomalies beneath the lake's surface, unusual readings that don't align with expectations. Could there be geothermal vents, hollow chambers, even ancient ruins buried beneath the ice? No such claims have been verified. Most scientists dismiss them as fantasy. But the magnetic anomaly remains. Its exact cause is still unknown. Like much of Antarctica, Lake Vostok guards its secrets well. And there is one more detail that fuels speculation. The drilling stopped. After reaching the lake and collecting a few samples, the Russian team halted further excavation. Officially, it was due to environmental concerns and technical challenges, but the pause left a vacuum, and where there is a vacuum, mystery thrives. In recent years, interest in Lake Vostok has waned in the public eye. Other subglacial lakes are now being explored with more advanced, sterile drilling methods. But Vostok, the oldest and deepest, remains the most enigmatic. No one knows what lies in its deeper waters. No one knows what has evolved there, unseen. And perhaps that's exactly what makes it so compelling. As the ice shifts above, and the seasons pass in endless twilight, Lake Vostok waits in silence, waiting for the next probe, the next sample, the next question. It is a place where the line between science and speculation begins to blur, where every answer only leads to more uncertainty. Could a lost biosphere be thriving beneath the ice? Or is the real mystery not what we've found, but what we haven't? The truth, for now, remains frozen, just beneath the surface. And as the shadows of Lake Vostok linger just beneath the ice, we move further into the polar unknown, toward a place steeped not only in geological mystery, but in history's most chilling chapter. Far to the north of the subglacial lake, along the barren Queen Maud Land coast, lies an expanse of jagged, ice-covered mountains and deep coastal inlets. Snow drifts endlessly over desolate plateaus. There are no cities here, no roads, no permanent presence. And yet, there are stories, whispers, reports that refuse to vanish. This is the region at the center of one of Antarctica's most enduring enigmas, the alleged Nazi base, hidden beneath the ice. At first glance, the idea seems like fiction. But the origins of the theory lie not in imagination, but in fact. In the late 1930s, Nazi Germany launched a series of polar expeditions under the command of Captain Alfred Richer. The mission? To establish a German presence in Antarctica. In January 1939, the expedition's vessel Schwabenland arrived at Queen Maud Land and began extensive aerial surveys of the region. Over 600,000 square kilometers were photographed and mapped. The Germans dropped aluminum darts bearing swastikas to mark territory, and they named the area Neuschwabenland. At the time, the stated purpose was economic, securing new whaling grounds and exploring the potential for resource extraction. But why, on the brink of a global war, would the Nazi regime devote such effort and resources to one of the most remote places on Earth? What were they really looking for? According to official records, the expedition returned to Germany weeks later. No permanent base was established. No claim to the land was internationally recognized. And yet, rumors persisted. In the years that followed, scattered accounts surfaced. Strange flights over the Southern Ocean, secret submarine routes, classified missions never fully disclosed. After World War II, those rumors intensified. One of the most often cited connections is Operation High Jump, an American military expedition to Antarctica launched in 1946. Led by Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the operation involved over 4,000 personnel, 13 ships, and aircraft carriers, far more than what would typically be needed for a scientific mission. Officially, the purpose was to test equipment in polar conditions and train military units. But the sheer scale and urgency of the operation led some to question whether there was another motive. Why did Operation High Jump end abruptly, weeks ahead of schedule? Why did Admiral Byrd, upon returning, allegedly warn that the next war could be fought at the poles? No official report supports such claims. Still, the ambiguity has fed decades of speculation. Some believe the Nazis did more in Antarctica than they ever admitted. That a base was constructed, perhaps underground, shielded beneath glaciers, built using advanced technology, evacuated in the final days of the Third Reich. The theory suggests that elite scientists and officers escaped via submarine convoys, establishing a hidden outpost from which the remnants of the Nazi regime could survive in secrecy. There is no hard evidence to support these claims, but they have proven remarkably persistent. Declassified documents show that Allied intelligence took the possibility seriously enough to investigate it in the post-war years. British forces conducted missions in the South Atlantic during this period, and U-boat sightings were reported as late as 1947. One particularly mysterious case centers on U-530 and U-977, two German submarines that surrendered months after Germany's official capitulation. Their captains offered only vague details about their journeys. Some believe these U-boats may have traveled to Antarctica first, before turning themselves in. Skeptics argue the timelines don't add up. The subs lacked the range. The journey would have been impossible without support. And yet, the very fact that these questions continue to arise suggests a deeper unease. An instinct that not all pieces of the historical puzzle have been found. More speculative theories go even further. Some claim that the Nazis discovered something in Antarctica, something ancient, perhaps even pre-human. These ideas often draw on fringe archaeology and the belief in a lost polar civilization. Unusual topographic features observed by satellite, such as perfectly geometric ice formations or magnetic anomalies, are cited as potential evidence of buried structures, naturally occurring, say scientists. But to others, these are the traces of something buried, something forbidden. Still others weave in tales of Nazi UFOs, suggesting that experimental aircraft were developed in the secrecy of the ice, and that post-war sightings of strange flying objects are somehow linked to these Antarctic prototypes. Though these claims lack verifiable proof, they've become entangled in broader conspiracies involving lost technology, occult knowledge, and hidden powers, adding to the mystique. But amidst the layers of speculation, certain truths remain. Germany did explore Antarctica. There were post-war concerns about Nazi escape routes, and Antarctica does conceal vast regions beneath ice, regions we've barely begun to explore. As of today, no structure, base, or technology linked to the Nazis has ever been discovered in Queen Maud Land. No recovered documents reveal a continuation of their presence in the southern hemisphere. Most historians dismiss the theories as a mix of Cold War paranoia and post-war myth-making. And yet, there is something about the isolation of Antarctica that resists certainty. In a place where nearly every inch of the landscape remains buried beneath ice, what we don't know often outweighs what we do. Could a base have existed, briefly, secretly, only to be abandoned or destroyed? Could evidence still lie beneath rock and glacier, too deep for satellites, too remote for excavation? Or are these stories merely echoes, reflections of our own fears projected onto the world's most mysterious frontier? The silence of Queen Maud Land holds no answers, only questions. And in the frozen stillness of Antarctica, those questions endure, untouched by time. And as the rumors of a secretive Nazi presence fade into the cold stillness of Queen Maud Land, we turn our attention to the ice itself, not to the surface, but beneath it, to what modern technology has only recently begun to reveal, and what may have been hidden for tens of thousands of years. In the heart of the Antarctic continent, where blizzards roll endlessly across the white horizon and the cold seeps into every crevice of exposed steel, lies a landscape largely unseen. Buried beneath miles of ice is a topography locked in time, a prehistoric world sealed under pressure, darkness, and silence. It was only in the last 2 decades that scientists began to pierce this frozen veil with a powerful new tool, LIDAR, or light detection and ranging. Mounted on satellites, planes, and ice-penetrating systems, this technology sends pulses of laser light toward the Earth's surface, measuring the time it takes to reflect back. In Antarctica, these readings, combined with radar and gravity mapping, have produced astonishing images of the land beneath the ice. What researchers found was both expected and utterly perplexing. Ridges and valleys, long dormant riverbeds, and entire mountain ranges, some larger than the Alps, began to take shape. These formations, long hidden from view, offered new insights into Antarctica's geological past. But scattered among these natural features were anomalies, shapes, angles, patterns. Some appeared too precise, too geometric, not the random contours of glacial movement or erosion, but formations with symmetry, rectilinear structures, repetitive lines, even what looked like clusters of square and circular depressions. Could these be ancient buildings, now entombed beneath ice that has been accumulating for over 30 million years? Mainstream scientists offer cautious explanations. Some of the formations may be the result of subglacial volcanism, hot spots that melted caverns in the ice and left behind collapsed chambers. Others may be unusually shaped rock outcrops distorted by the layers of glacial compression above them. But not all anomalies can be so easily dismissed. In one remote region of East Antarctica, near the Princess Elizabeth Land sector, LIDAR scans revealed what appeared to be a massive rectangular structure buried beneath over a mile of ice. Measuring hundreds of meters in length, its sharp angles and proportional lines stood out starkly from the surrounding terrain. The structure, though deeply obscured by ice, showed no signs of being a natural formation, at least not in the traditional sense. Scientists who reviewed the data urged restraint. The readings were incomplete. Artifacts of signal distortion, they suggested, or misinterpretations of bedrock formations. But some researchers quietly acknowledged what others only dared to speculate, that this particular formation didn't resemble anything geologically familiar. Could it be evidence of a lost civilization, one predating known human history? The question isn't new. The idea that Antarctica might once have been ice-free and habitable is supported by real scientific evidence. Geological cores taken from the continent have revealed fossilized plants, ancient pollen, and signs of tropical forests. Around 90 million years ago, in the Cretaceous period, Antarctica was lush and warm. But some theories go further. A growing number of fringe researchers suggest that the continent remained partially ice-free until much more recently, possibly as late as 10,000 BC. They cite maps like the Piri-Reis chart of 1513, which appears to depict a detailed coastline of Antarctica centuries before it was officially discovered. Historians argue the map was based on earlier Mediterranean sources, perhaps describing South America. But the debate endures. If the continent was once accessible to ancient peoples, long before the last ice age fully sealed it off, could those people have left something behind? Other LIDAR and radar surveys have hinted at additional anomalies. In Marie Byrd Land, satellite readings picked up a grid-like pattern beneath the ice. Rows and columns, spaced evenly, stretching across several square kilometers. Ice-penetrating radar confirmed the presence of a low-relief pattern embedded in the bedrock, but its nature remains unknown. Was it a natural tectonic feature? Or something else? Skeptics point out that the ice sheet above these areas can distort readings. Data noise, overlapping layers, or software interpretations can all create illusions. And yet, not all illusions repeat themselves with such precision. Some have gone further still, linking these submerged structures to ancient legends. Stories of lost civilizations like Atlantis, which Plato claimed had vanished beneath the sea around 9000 BC. Could the island continent, described in ancient texts, have been Antarctica? Did a prehistoric culture once flourish there, only to be wiped out by a sudden climate catastrophe? These are questions conventional science cannot yet answer, and most would argue it shouldn't try, until more evidence is found. Antarctica is not an easy place to explore. Drilling into these regions would require monumental effort and international cooperation, all while preserving one of Earth's last untouched environments. For now, the mystery remains sealed. We have the scans, the shapes, the suggestions, but no artifacts, no inscriptions, no definitive sign of human or non-human craftsmanship. Still, the implications linger in the mind. If there is a structure buried beneath the Antarctic ice, who built it? When? And what lies inside? Could we be staring at the silent remnants of a forgotten chapter of Earth's history, one so deeply buried that it has evaded every conquest, every empire, every map? Or are we simply seeing the Earth's raw, chaotic geology, misread through the lens of curiosity and the hope that somewhere deep below lies something beyond the reach of time? Until we dig deeper, literally and figuratively, those answers will remain elusive, frozen beneath the surface, waiting. As the laser-sharp precision of LIDAR continues to unveil shapes beneath the Antarctic ice, some familiar, others still unexplained, we move from the solid to the hollow, from sharp edges and buried formations to the eerie possibility of voids, cavities deep within the ice, where the signal returns not with resistance, but with silence. It begins in the vast expanse of the Transantarctic Mountains, a colossal range that slices the continent in half like a frozen spine. Here, cliffs of ice meet black rock, and katabatic winds scream down glacial slopes with an almost mechanical howl. The terrain is brutal, yet strangely pristine, untouched, unbothered, and for the most part, unseen. Beneath these ancient peaks, radar surveys have detected something unexpected, unexplained gaps in the bedrock echo. These are not surface anomalies, nor are they the gentle depressions caused by melting or movement. These signatures, seen in both radio echo sounding and ice-penetrating radar, are negative spaces, areas where the returning signal is sharply interrupted, suggesting the presence of vast, empty pockets below. At first, Scientists attributed these phenomena to subglacial caves, perhaps created by geothermal heat melting the ice from below. This isn't unheard of. Volcanic activity is known to exist beneath parts of Antarctica, especially under regions like Marie Birdland and Mount Erebus. Thermal vents and underground rivers can create ice tunnels, similar to the lava tubes found in Hawaii or Iceland. But not all the anomalies fit this explanation. Some of the voids aren't located near known geothermal hotspots. Others are too large, too structured, symmetrical even. In one case, a radar sweep near the Mertz Glacier revealed a chamber roughly the size of the Empire State Building, buried deep within the ice sheet. It exhibited flat upper and lower bounds, sharply defined walls, and curiously consistent measurements, far too regular, some say, to be the result of natural processes alone. What could carve such a space beneath 2 miles of ice? One theory suggests ancient lava chambers, now inactive, may have been preserved beneath the ice for millions of years. Another points to trapped pockets of air from earlier climate cycles, sealed during rapid freeze events. There is even speculation about subglacial lakes that have since drained, leaving behind hollow basins. But there is one detail that continues to challenge these interpretations. Some of the voids show internal echoes, faint reflections coming from within the hollow space itself. These reflections behave differently from glacial noise or bedrock scatter. In several documented cases, they repeat in patterns, as if bouncing off internal structures or surfaces. Could these be pillars, dividing walls, man-made rooms? To most scientists, such conclusions stretch beyond acceptable limits of inference. The signal could be distorted by layers of compressed ice or minerals. Echo patterns are notoriously complex in multi-layered environments. But the truth is, the data is incomplete. And in the absence of concrete evidence, the mystery lingers. In 2018, an international research team conducted high-resolution radar mapping of Dome C, one of Antarctica's most stable regions. There, beneath an otherwise unremarkable stretch of the plateau, they recorded a vertical cavity, narrow, deep, and oddly uniform. It resembled an elevator shaft more than a lava tube. At over 300 feet tall and with a near rectilinear cross-section, it became a subject of quiet fascination within the scientific community. No drill was sent, no sample retrieved. The feature, like so many others in Antarctica, remains unconfirmed. Enter the fringe theorists. For decades, rumors have circulated about hidden chambers beneath the ice, connected to lost civilizations, advanced technologies, or even non-human intelligence. These ideas are often dismissed as fantasy. But some theorists point to these radar anomalies as potential evidence, not as proof, but as starting points. If vast, hollow structures do exist beneath the ice, what were they for? Could they have been constructed? If so, by whom and when? Some even suggest these chambers are not ancient but modern. Secret facilities, research outposts buried intentionally. After all, Antarctica is governed by international treaties, but not immune to secrecy. The Antarctic Treaty System, established in 1959, prohibits military activity and mineral extraction, but enforcement is limited, and vast regions of the continent remain entirely unmonitored. Is it possible that something is down there, intentionally concealed? Most geologists and glaciologists resist these interpretations. Science demands evidence, and radar signatures alone do not constitute proof of anything artificial. And yet, among the community, there is also a growing acknowledgement of the unknown. Antarctica's subsurface is one of the least understood environments on Earth. Fewer than 1% of its buried structures have been physically verified. In many places, we are still looking through a keyhole, guessing at the room beyond. As instruments become more sensitive and computational models improve, our understanding of these anomalies may evolve. One day, a hollow chamber might be physically entered. samples may be extracted. A more mundane explanation may arise. But until then, the questions remain. What created these cavities deep beneath the Antarctic ice? Why do some of them exhibit such geometric precision? And what, if anything, might be hidden within them? We are left with silence. Echoes. Readings traced in numbers on screens thousands of miles from the continent itself, and a growing sense that beneath the frozen crust of Antarctica, something unknown is waiting. A world of shadows and voids, of signals returned from empty space, where absence becomes the mystery. And so, as radar pulses fade into the echoing silence of hollow chambers beneath the ice, our attention shifts upward toward the exposed bones of the frozen continent, toward something visible, yet no less enigmatic. Rising from the endless white of West Antarctica, the Ellsworth Mountains stand like frozen sentinels against the horizon. Jagged peaks pierce the sky in stark contrast to the flat, featureless expanse of the surrounding ice sheet. Wind scours the rock faces with relentless force, stripping away snow and revealing ancient stone, black, gray, and pale granite, gleaming under the polar sun. But among these peaks, in a remote part of the Heritage Range, one formation in particular has captured the imagination of geologists, researchers, and theorists alike. A mountain shaped like a perfect pyramid. Seen from above, whether in photographs, satellite images, or aerial surveys, the structure appears eerily symmetrical. Its four faces slope at near identical angles. Its apex is sharp. The sides are aligned with uncanny precision, standing apart from the irregular, fractured peaks surrounding it. At first glance, it seems impossible. A natural mountain with the shape of an artificial monument, rising in one of the most desolate and least explored regions on Earth. How could such a formation exist? Geologists offer a clear and well-grounded explanation. The mountain, like many in the Ellsworth Range, was sculpted over hundreds of millions of years by powerful tectonic forces and glacial erosion. The pyramid shape, while unusual, is not without precedent. Newbor, a pyramidal peak in Norway, and Matterhorn in the Alps, exhibit similarly sharp and symmetrical outlines. These are known as glacial horns, mountains carved from multiple directions by converging glaciers that eat away at their flanks, leaving behind sharp ridges and pointed summits. It is, in theory, simply the outcome of time, ice, and stone. But even seasoned researchers admit the geometry of this Antarctic peak is unusually precise. More than coincidence, perhaps? Or merely a case of our pattern-seeking minds interpreting symmetry where nature provides randomness? This is where the mystery deepens. Satellite imagery, made widely accessible in the past 2 decades, sparked renewed interest in the so-called Antarctic Pyramid. Independent analysts, alternative historians, and internet theorists began dissecting the photos, measuring angles, comparing coordinates, overlaying ancient maps and geometric grids. Theories emerged, ranging from the plausible to the provocative. Some pointed out that the pyramid's sides appear to be aligned with the cardinal directions, north, south, east, and west, mirroring the orientation of the Great Pyramid of Giza. Coincidence? Or a pattern repeated across time, space, and culture? Others drew connections to Piri Reis's map of 1513, which some believe depicts an ice-free coastline of Antarctica, arguably consistent with a much earlier exploration of the continent. If Antarctica was once accessible to early civilizations, could they have left behind more than just myth? A more fringe theory suggests the mountain is not a natural formation at all, but the ruined remains of an ancient structure, now encased in rock or designed to mimic one. Could a prehistoric culture, long lost to time, have reached this far south? And if so, why here? Skeptics point to a lack of physical evidence. There are no carvings, no stone blocks, no entrances or chambers. Just rock. Raw, untouched granite, unshaped by hand, unmarked by tools. But the location poses a significant challenge to exploration. Temperatures here routinely plummet below -70 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds gust at hurricane force. The region is hundreds of miles from the nearest permanent research station. Reaching the peak requires extreme planning, specialized equipment, and extraordinary resilience. Very few have seen it up close, and so the mystery remains suspended, caught between satellite screens and the ice-locked real world, where observation is limited and confirmation elusive. Some theorists take a wider view, linking the pyramid-shaped mountain to global patterns. They note that pyramidal structures, or pyramid-like forms, appear across the globe, from Central America to Egypt, from China to Bosnia. Is it a coincidence of culture? A shared geometry rooted in practicality and symbolism? Or could it suggest something more unified, something ancient and far-reaching? Even within mainstream academia, there is growing recognition that our understanding of pre-Ice Age civilizations remains incomplete. Much of human history, particularly before 10,000 BC, is lost beneath oceans, jungles, and glaciers. Could Antarctica, sealed under ice for millennia, be preserving something we have yet to discover? Or is this simply the power of perception? The same human impulse that sees faces in clouds and figures in stone, now projected onto a lonely mountain in a forgotten range? No scientific paper has declared the pyramid anything more than a mountain. No expedition has returned with artifacts. Yet the formation persists, quietly, immovably, on satellite images and in our imaginations. Its slopes remain untouched. Its angles remain unmeasured. Its silence unbroken. Is it truly natural? A quirk of erosion frozen in time? Or is it something else, something that demands a closer look? For now, the pyramid-shaped mountain of the Ellsworth Range stands as it has for millions of years, a monument of stone and mystery, waiting beneath the southern sky, waiting to be understood or to be found. From the sharp-angled silhouette of a lone pyramid in the Ellsworth Range, we shift our focus westward, into one of the most remote, enigmatic corners of Antarctica. A place where the ice seems thinner, where the surface above subtly rises and falls, where something beneath the frozen crust radiates with a silent intensity that continues to puzzle scientists. This is Byrd land. Sprawling across more than 1.5 million square kilometers, this vast expanse of ice and rock is one of the most isolated regions on the planet. It has no permanent research stations, no airstrips, and no indigenous history. In fact, it is one of the only land masses on Earth not claimed by any nation under international law, a geopolitical blank space. And yet, despite, or perhaps because of, its emptiness, Byrd land has drawn increasing attention in recent years, not for what lies above the ice, but for what lies beneath. It started with a temperature anomaly. In 2017, NASA-funded researchers published data revealing a massive heat source beneath the Antarctic ice sheet in this region, an intense geothermal flux radiating upward from deep within the Earth. According to radar and gravity measurements, this hidden heat pocket was melting the base of the ice from below, causing significant subsurface water flow and even lubricating the glacial movement above. To many, the most surprising part of the discovery was that this wasn't new. The heat source had likely been active for thousands, even millions of years. But only with the aid of advanced instruments was its full scope finally detected. What could be generating such heat beneath a frozen wasteland? The mainstream explanation points to a mantle plume, a column of hot rock rising from deep within the Earth's interior. Similar to the geological processes that created the Hawaiian Islands or Yellowstone's supervolcano, mantle plumes are known to exist in tectonically stable regions, pushing intense heat toward the crust over immense timescales. This would make sense. Antarctica, though largely dormant tectonically, does host known volcanoes, most notably Mount Erebus, one of the world's few continuously active volcanoes. And Marie Byrd Land, it turns out, is situated over a large dome-shaped bulge in the crust, consistent with what a plume might create. But not everyone is satisfied with this explanation. Some researchers have noted that the heat flux detected in Marie Byrd Land is unusually high, far exceeding the output of most known mantle plumes. Moreover, the anomaly appears to be oddly localized, not spreading out in the gradual, diffuse pattern typically expected of deep Earth heating. Could there be another explanation? Some have proposed that a collapsed magma chamber, long dormant and now slowly releasing residual heat, could be to blame. Others suggest ancient hydrothermal systems, perhaps even vast subglacial lakes, might be generating their own internal energy through geothermal and chemical processes. Still others reach beyond accepted science. Among fringe theorists, Marie Byrd Land has long been whispered about as a place of interest, connected to alleged wartime expeditions, deep Earth anomalies, and unexplained electromagnetic readings. Some claim the region exhibits unusual satellite signatures, including regular thermal spikes and unexplained magnetic fields. One theory speculates that the heat source could be the byproduct of ancient technology, something buried long ago, still generating power beneath the ice. Another links the site to hollow Earth legends, proposing that an entrance to vast subterranean caverns might lie hidden under Marie Byrd's ice sheets, an idea reinforced by the strange dome-like shape of the crust in this region. These ideas, while captivating, remain unverified, largely speculative, and unsupported by peer-reviewed research. Yet the allure persists, especially given how little of Marie Byrd Land has been directly studied. Even with satellite data and radar scans, much of what lies beneath remains unseen. Adding to the mystery, researchers have also observed rapid ice movement in certain areas above the heat anomaly, unexpected shifts and changes that suggest complex interactions between the melting base, the overlying ice, and unknown geological processes. In places, the ice sheet appears to be rising from below, as if pushed by forces we do not yet fully understand. Could these movements be signs of volcanic activity on the verge of awakening? Or are they responses to deeper, slower processes, ones not yet accounted for in our models? Even the history of Marie Byrd Land feels incomplete. Named after the wife of famed explorer Admiral Richard E. Byrd, the region was surveyed from the air in the 1930s, but has seen little direct exploration since. Its isolation, logistical difficulty, and harsh climate have made detailed study nearly impossible, leaving it in many ways as mysterious today as it was a century ago. In a continent already defined by extremes, cold, isolation, silence, Marie Byrd Land stands apart, a place of quiet pressure, of buried warmth, of invisible forces moving beneath the ice. Is this heat source merely a geological quirk, born from deep Earth dynamics we barely comprehend? Or is it something more, an overlooked key to Antarctica's ancient past, or even its forgotten future? No one can say for certain. For now, the anomaly pulses below the ice in silence, a slow burn under a frozen world, undisturbed, unconfirmed, and waiting to be understood. As we leave behind the smoldering mystery of the anomalous heat beneath Marie Byrd Land, our path leads toward another enigma, one equally remote, equally unsettling. But this time, it isn't geothermal energy or glacial pressure we're tracking. It is something harder, denser, something that reflects the instruments used to detect it in a way that ice, rock, or even water cannot. It is something metallic, buried deep beneath the vast, slow-moving ice of the Whillans ice stream in West Antarctica, a puzzling discovery has quietly stirred intrigue within scientific circles. The Whillans ice stream is one of several large flows that drain the interior of the continent toward the Ross Ice Shelf. These glacial rivers, imperceptible to the naked eye, move at speeds of up to several meters per day, massive sheets of ice gliding silently over bedrock and meltwater channels far below. In 2018, during a series of airborne radar and magnetometry surveys conducted by an international glaciology team, something unexpected appeared on their sensors. A localized anomaly, roughly elliptical in shape, approximately 30 meters long, deeply embedded beneath the ice, possibly even within the underlying rock substrate. It was detected not by sight, but by the way it disrupted magnetic and radar readings, standing out like a fingerprint on glass. It reflected radar waves sharply. It distorted magnetic fields subtly but measurably. And it appeared to contain a high concentration of metal, far more than would be expected in that geological context. What could it be? Initial theories leaned toward the conventional. Perhaps it was a dense, iron-rich meteorite, buried long ago and slowly overtaken by the relentless advance of glacial ice. Antarctica, after all, is one of the best places in the world to find meteorites. The white ice makes the dark stones easier to spot, and the continent's dry, cold climate preserves them exceptionally well. But this object was too deep, and its composition, based on radar return signatures, didn't align neatly with known meteorite profiles. It wasn't simply dense, it was structured, layered in a way that suggested uniformity, consistency, almost engineering. Could it be a piece of ancient terrestrial machinery, a natural mineral formation with unusual magnetic properties, or something else entirely? The surrounding geology offered few clues. The bedrock beneath the Whillans ice stream is a chaotic mix of volcanic remnants, compressed sediment, and ancient tectonic fragments. It is an area that, while largely unexplored, does not typically show high levels of iron or manufactured metals. And yet, the object remained, silent and persistent in the data, surviving multiple flyovers and scans. Some scientists have hypothesized that it may be a fragment of an asteroid impactor, deeply embedded into the crust and long since hidden by the ice. Others believe it could be a naturally occurring iron-nickel deposit, perhaps the remnant of ancient volcanic activity. But even these more grounded theories struggle to explain the cleanness of the signature. Natural formations tend to be irregular, scattered. This anomaly was singular, deliberate. Inevitably, more speculative ideas began to surface. Could this be an artificial object, buried long before the ice covered this region tens of thousands of years ago? A remnant of a lost civilization, as some fringe theorists suggest? Perhaps one that predates our known history? Or might it be an unrecovered artifact from a secret post-war expedition, lost and entombed in the ice, whether scientific, military, or something in between? Others go even further, proposing that the metallic anomaly is not of Earth at all, that it may be a technological object, not a geological one. Some interpret the shape as suggestive of a capsule or even a long-buried probe, the kind of thing humanity might one day send to another planet, only, in this case, received, not launched. But there is, of course, no concrete evidence for these claims. No excavation has been attempted. The logistics alone are daunting. The object lies under nearly a mile of solid ice in one of the harshest environments on Earth, and unlike Lake Vostok or Dome Sea, there is currently no established infrastructure to support such a mission in this part of the continent. So for now, the object remains untouched, buried, unexamined, and unresolved. The research teams who detected it have moved on to other projects. The data was cataloged, shared with international partners, and quietly filed away. But among those who study Antarctica's mysteries, the anomaly continues to surface in conversation, in quiet, thoughtful tones marked by uncertainty. Because while science demands caution, it also thrives on curiosity, and this object, this sharp, unyielding anomaly beneath the ice, is undeniably curious. What is it made of? How long has it been there? And perhaps most importantly, who or what put it there? Is this simply an unexplored quirk of geology, awaiting a mundane explanation? Or is it a thread that, if pulled, might unravel part of Antarctica's deeper history, one that predates our written records, our maps, our civilizations? The Whillans ice stream flows onward, slowly burying the object deeper with each passing year. Snow accumulates above, layers compress, and the cold presses in from all sides. The signal remains, but the questions multiply. In a land defined by its stillness, it is not the movement of ice that captures our attention, but what lies frozen beneath it, unmoving, unknown, and possibly not of this world. As instruments continue to hum across the surface of the Whillans ice stream, their signals bouncing off hidden metallic shapes buried far below, another layer of Antarctica begins to speak, not through echoes or magnetic fields, but through something more delicate and alive. High on the East Antarctic Plateau, the cold is absolute. This is the driest, windiest, and most frigid place on Earth. The snow here never melts. It simply accumulates, compresses, and slowly turns to ice over tens of thousands of years. In this ancient frozen archive, time is not lost, it is preserved. And within its silent layers, scientists have discovered something unexpected. Microbial spores, alive, dormant, trapped in microscopic pockets of crystalline ice that date back tens, perhaps hundreds of thousands of years. Recovered from deep ice cores extracted at sites like Vostok Station and Dome C, these microscopic life forms lie in suspended animation, frozen in time. Under powerful microscopes, they appear unremarkable, tiny spherical cells encased in transparent chambers of ice. But when thawed under controlled conditions, some of them begin to stir. They move. Not all. Many remain inert, destroyed by the crushing weight of time and temperature. But a few awaken, metabolize, multiply. The implications are profound. These are not modern contaminants. Rigorous decontamination protocols and isotopic dating confirm their antiquity. In some cases, the spores are estimated to be over 400,000 years old. Long before Homo sapiens emerged, long before recorded history. Life, it seems, can endure under conditions far more extreme than previously thought. But this is only the beginning of the mystery. Where did these microorganisms come from? Some are similar to known species, extremophiles that thrive in cold, dry environments. But others do not match any existing catalog. Their genetic markers are incomplete or anomalous. Their metabolic processes behave differently under reanimation. Some researchers have speculated that these could represent entirely novel branches of microbial life, possibly long extinct on the surface, but preserved beneath the ice. What does it mean for our understanding of Earth's biosphere? Are these life forms ancient survivors from a time before the last ice age? Or are they something even older, relics of a primordial biosphere, buried and forgotten beneath layers of geological time? And then, the questions widen. Could such organisms hint at the kind of life that might exist on other worlds? Mars, with its polar ice caps, Europa, with its subsurface oceans, Enceladus, where plumes of water erupt into space. If microbial life can survive for 500,000 years beneath Antarctic ice, what might be hiding beneath the frozen crusts of distant moons. In fact, some astrobiologists believe that Antarctica serves as a natural analog for extraterrestrial environments. NASA and ESA have both used Antarctic expeditions to test equipment and protocols intended for missions beyond Earth. The logic is simple. If we can detect ancient, dormant life here, we may be able to detect it elsewhere. But not everyone is focused on the stars. Some look deeper into our own planet's forgotten past. A few researchers propose that these microbes may not merely be survivors of environmental extremes, but witnesses to forgotten ecosystems. Perhaps Antarctica, once lush and temperate millions of years ago, hosted a biosphere now erased by the march of ice. These spores may be the last remnants of a world that once teemed with life that adapted, endured, and then disappeared. Other voices, quieter still, suggest something more controversial. Could these microbes be not from here? The panspermia hypothesis, once relegated to the realm of speculative theory, has regained interest in recent years. It proposes that life on Earth, or at least some components of it, may have arrived from space, carried on comets, meteorites, or cosmic dust. Antarctica, with its pristine conditions and ancient ice, is one of the best places to look for such evidence. Could some of these spores be extraterrestrial in origin? Trapped not in Earth's own cycles, but in the impact debris of an object that fell from the stars? Mainstream science stops short of endorsing such claims. There is no definitive proof. And yet, the findings remain difficult to fully explain. Some spores contain unusual protein structures. Others survive exposure to high levels of radiation, far beyond the tolerance of most known life on Earth. In laboratory settings, certain samples have shown resilience to vacuum, desiccation, and extreme pH levels. Characteristics that echo what scientists believe would be necessary for life to endure the journey between planets. Still, the dominant view is one of Earth-based extremophiles, organisms that adapted long ago to Antarctica's brutal environment and then entered dormancy as conditions deteriorated. But even that raises questions. Why have they remained viable for so long? What triggered their original entrapment in the ice? And are there other forms of life, still deeper, still dormant, that we have yet to find? As the drilling rigs retreat and the cores are sealed in sterile containers, the ice continues to reveal its secrets, layer by layer. Inside each frozen crystal may lie a chapter of Earth's hidden history, or perhaps a whisper from another world, tiny, ancient, and almost invisible. These microbial spores remind us that the boundary between the known and the unknown is far thinner than we often believe. How much more life sleeps beneath Antarctica's frozen skin? And when we wake it, what will it remember? The ice remembers everything. And slowly, it begins to speak. As the microscope pulls away from the delicate forms of ancient spores encased in Antarctic ice, we journey once again to the visible world, though no less mysterious. There, on the edge of the frozen continent, where the vast whiteness of the landscape seems eternal and untouched, something bleeds. At the terminus of Taylor Glacier, nestled within the McMurdo dry valleys of East Antarctica, a crimson stain flows from the ice. It spills down the sheer white face of the glacier like an open wound, cascading into the frozen surface of Lake Bonny below. This striking feature is known simply, and ominously, as blood falls. Its color is haunting. The deep rusted red against the blue-white ice is almost surreal, like a brushstroke of something alive in a place otherwise void of color. For over a century, Blood Falls has puzzled and fascinated explorers, scientists, and theorists alike. The first recorded sighting came in 1911, when Australian geologist Griffith Taylor stumbled across the phenomenon while surveying the region that would later bear his name. At the time, the sight of blood-red water pouring from the heart of a glacier defied all expectations. and in many ways, it still does. The initial assumption was simple. Algae, some kind of pigment-producing microorganism, perhaps thriving in pockets of meltwater and staining the ice as it emerged. But further analysis ruled that out. There were no photosynthetic organisms, no blooms. Instead, the color came from iron oxides, essentially rust, produced by a process deep beneath the glacier. So what causes it? Beneath Taylor Glacier lies a sealed subglacial lake, cut off from the surface for over 1 million years. There, in complete darkness, under intense pressure and sub-zero temperatures, briny water has slowly flowed, rich in iron and loaded with ancient microbial life. When the iron-rich brine escapes to the surface, it oxidizes upon contact with air, turning a vivid red. The effect is dramatic, immediate, and visually unforgettable. But if the mechanism is now understood, many deeper questions remain. How has this ecosystem survived for so long, isolated from the rest of the planet? What kind of life exists there, and how does it function in such extreme conditions? And perhaps most importantly, where does this brine come from? The source of the flow remains elusive. Scientists have identified a deep network of fissures and channels within the glacier, carved not by melting, but by pressurized brine moving slowly over time. But the origin point, the true source of this liquid system, has never been fully mapped. Could it extend far beyond Taylor Glacier? Might it be part of a larger, interconnected network of hidden lakes and rivers beneath Antarctica's frozen crust? Some believe it might. Using radar and seismic tools, researchers have begun to detect subglacial water systems spanning hundreds of miles. These are not static lakes, but moving networks, rivers of liquid water flowing beneath the ice sheet. And in a place thought to be entirely frozen, the idea of flowing water, and the life it may carry, reshapes our understanding of the continent. The microbial life in bloodfalls is equally strange. The organisms recovered from the outflow are anaerobic, meaning they do not require oxygen. Instead, they metabolize sulfates and iron, a process more commonly associated with deep-sea hydrothermal vents or underground rock formations. This makes them extremophiles, organisms that thrive in environments lethal to most known life. But what if they are more than survivors? What if they are descendants, or even relatives, of life that once thrived in a very different Antarctica? Because the continent we know today, frozen, lifeless, remote, wasn't always so. Geological records indicate that during the Eocene epoch, over 40 million years ago, Antarctica was temperate and forested. Fossilized leaves, pollen, and even tree trunks have been discovered beneath the ice. Could bloodfalls be a portal into that forgotten world, its microbial inhabitants the last echoes of ecosystems that once thrived above? And what if it goes even further back? Some have suggested that the brine beneath Taylor Glacier may contain life forms older than the Ice Age, preserved in a kind of biological time capsule. Others wonder whether this liquid environment, cut off from surface contamination, might offer evidence of pre-human biospheres, or even microbial signatures we have never encountered before. Then there are the more speculative theories. A few fringe voices propose that the red flow is a biochemical signature, not merely geological. Could it be the byproduct of something artificial? A warning sign, even? Some link the phenomenon to broader theories of hidden Antarctic structures, suggesting that bloodfalls might be more than a natural leak, but a signal of something below. Still others point to the symbolism of the flow itself, a glacier that bleeds. In the heart of one of the driest, coldest places on Earth, something persists, unseen, alive and flowing. Is it coincidence, or a reminder that the continent's secrets are far from dormant? The truth, as always, remains just out of reach. Though we now understand the chemical reaction that gives bloodfalls its color, we are still only beginning to explore its deeper story, the subsurface networks, the biological anomalies, the ancient chemistry that has unfolded in complete isolation for eons. So the question lingers. What else lies beneath the ice? What other rivers of brine, life, and mystery are waiting to rise, bleeding from the past into our present? In Antarctica, where silence reigns and time freezes, even the smallest flow can carry with it a tidal wave of questions, and blood falls continues to flow. The red-streaked outflow of blood falls fades behind us, its eerie colors vanishing into the endless white horizon. But as the eye moves across the stark silence of the Antarctic landscape, our attention is drawn not to what can be seen, but to what can be heard, or rather, felt. The Ross Ice Shelf, a vast expanse of frozen water larger than the state of California, stretches along the southern edge of the continent. It is a place of extremes, where the ice is hundreds of meters thick, where temperatures routinely plunge below 60 degrees Celsius, and where the winds carve the snow into otherworldly shapes. Its surface is still, desolate. To the casual observer, silent. But beneath that surface, the shelf is not entirely at rest. In 2018, researchers monitoring the shelf with a network of seismometers discovered something unexpected: a low-frequency hum pulsing through the ice like a subterranean heartbeat. It is not audible to the human ear, but when sped up for analysis, it produces a sound that is rhythmic, oscillating, and persistent. The hum, it turns out, is caused by vibrations within the ice, specifically from the constant shifting of snow dunes and pressure changes above, which cause the entire ice shelf to subtly flex and resonate. The result is a kind of natural vibration chamber, sending ripples through the frozen mass in a steady, droning beat. But what makes this hum so unusual is not just its existence, but its consistency. It continues, unbroken, through day and night. It shifts in pitch when storms pass overhead. It changes as temperatures rise and fall, and yet its core rhythm remains, like a signal echoing in the deep. Why is the ice singing? Scientists have drawn comparisons to the way a musical instrument vibrates when played. The snow and wind interact with the structure of the shelf, much like a bow on a violin string, creating oscillations that reverberate across hundreds of miles. Some researchers have even described the Ross Ice Shelf as a massive geophysical resonator, an acoustic chamber of ice and air, alive with motion we cannot see. In practical terms, this discovery is valuable. Monitoring the hum allows researchers to track changes in the ice shelf's stability, to detect potential cracks or shifts long before they become visible. It offers a non-invasive way to listen to the health of the continent's frozen front line. But still, there is something haunting about it. A sound that is always there, hidden beneath layers of silence. A voice from the ice itself. And, as with many Antarctic phenomena, the mystery deepens the closer we listen. Some sections of the hum have been reported to contain anomalous frequencies, brief shifts that don't align with known weather or snowdrift patterns. In a few recordings, analysts have noted irregular modulations, almost like Morse code or signals. Could there be more than natural forces at work? Mainstream science maintains that all observed patterns are consistent with environmental interactions. Snow dunes reshape, air pressure drops, wind scours the surface, and the ice responds. Yet there are moments, rare but documented, where the hum seems to change without a clear external cause. What could it mean? Some speculate that underground movements, perhaps slow shifts in the crust beneath the shelf, or the grinding of subglacial rivers, might be influencing the frequencies. Others wonder whether hidden chambers, hollow cavities long buried in the ice, are resonating differently, amplifying some vibrations while muting others. Then come the more speculative ideas. A few independent researchers have pointed out that parts of the Ross ice shelf sit above ancient seafloor features, unmapped ridges, trenches, and possible volcanic structures. Could geothermal activity be subtly shaping the shelf from below, causing minute but rhythmic disruptions in its structure? Others push further, drawing comparisons between the Ross hum and acoustic anomalies reported in other extreme locations, such as the unexplained bloop detected in the Pacific Ocean in the 1990s. Is Antarctica simply another place where our instruments have brushed up against something beyond easy explanation? Fringe theorists, as expected, offer their own interpretations. Some suggest the hum could be an echo from deep within the Earth, resonating through the hollow layers of ice as part of a planetary mechanism we've yet to understand. Others whisper of buried technology, sealed beneath the ice in ancient times, now dormant but still humming faintly through the frozen air. A signal, perhaps. A remnant. While there is no evidence for such claims, the idea that Antarctica might still harbor unknown phenomena beneath its vast, unexplored layers is not entirely outlandish. After all, more than 90% of the continent remains unexplored at depth. The Ross ice shelf alone contains enough volume to cover all of Texas in over 600 feet of ice, and within that volume, vibrations persist. What makes the hum so compelling is that it is not just a scientific curiosity, but something felt, an invisible rhythm echoing through one of Earth's most mysterious landscapes. It suggests motion in stillness, life in silence, a pulse in a place we believed lifeless. So we are left with questions. Is this simply the breath of the ice? A natural exhalation of wind, snow, and pressure? Or is it something more? An encrypted message in frequency and vibration, something waiting to be interpreted. In Antarctica, even silence has a sound. And the ice, it hums. As the low-frequency hum of the Ross ice shelf fades back into the depths of the continent's icy breath, we shift focus once more, this time to what lies within the rock itself, not beneath the ice or echoing through it, but entombed in the ancient stone that once formed the foundation of a very different Antarctica. Here, in the foothills of the Transantarctic Mountains, jagged peaks break through the ice like the skeletal remains of a forgotten world. Wind scours the exposed rock faces, revealing strata untouched by human hands for millions of years. It is among these weathered cliffs and shale beds that explorers have found something remarkable. Not bones, not petrified wood, but insects. Fossilized, preserved, and, in some cases, enormous. Fragmented impressions in the stone, wing casings the length of a human hand, mandibles large enough to suggest powerful biting strength, delicate antennae, frozen in time, now imprinted into the shale like whispers of another epoch. These are not the insects we know today. These are the relics of a prehistoric Antarctica, warm, forested, and teeming with life. But how could such creatures have existed here? To modern eyes, Antarctica is the very definition of inhospitable. A vast frozen desert, devoid of trees, flowers, or anything resembling the ecosystems where insects typically flourish. Yet the fossil record tells a different story. Roughly 250 to 100 million years ago, during the late Paleozoic and early Mesozoic eras, Antarctica was part of the supercontinent Gondwana, connected to what is now South America, Africa, India, and Australia. Back then, the continent lay closer to the equator. It was lush, covered in dense forests of ferns, mosses, and towering trees. Rivers carved their way through valleys alive with amphibians, reptiles, and, yes, insects. Fossils recovered from the Beacon Supergroup rock formation, some dating back over 300 million years, confirm the presence of ancient insect life. But in recent decades, paleontologists have uncovered specimens that push the boundaries of what we thought possible. Fossils of giant predatory dragonflies with wingspans exceeding 2 feet. Evidence of colossal beetles, their hardened carapaces still recognizable in the sedimentary layers. Creatures far larger than anything alive today in their respective families. What allowed these insects to grow so large? One theory points to atmospheric oxygen levels. During the late Carboniferous period, oxygen concentrations may have reached up to 35% compared to today's 21%. Insects rely on passive diffusion to absorb oxygen, so higher concentrations would have enabled greater body size. That much is understood. But what puzzles scientists is how long these insects appear to have persisted in high latitudes, long after other regions of the world had cooled and the oxygen levels began to drop. The fossil record in Antarctica suggests a delayed extinction curve, a prolonged survival of mega-insects in southern Gondwana, while their northern cousins vanished. Why? Was Antarctica's unique geology, its slow continental drift and massive volcanic plateaus, somehow insulating it from global climate shifts? Did its remote location preserve microclimates that allowed giant insects to endure for longer than expected? Or is it possible that we still don't fully understand what was happening here? A few fossil beds near the Fremont Formation have produced fragments of wings and exoskeletons with no exact match in the global database, suggesting either unknown species or radical local adaptations. Some of these remnants feature unusual structures, ridged veins along the wings, asymmetrical body segments, or strange articulation points in the limbs. Some researchers argue these are simple preservation quirks, natural distortions caused by pressure and time. Others are not so sure. Could these be the marks of transitional species, linking known insect families to now extinct lines? Or could they belong to an entirely separate evolutionary branch, developed in isolation as Antarctica cooled and drifted southward? Speculative voices have taken the idea even further. Certain fringe theorists have suggested that some of these giant insect fossils are too advanced, too complex, to fit within known taxonomic structures. They point to ridges that resemble engineered components, symmetries too precise to be natural. While mainstream science dismisses these claims as pareidolia, the human tendency to perceive patterns where none exist, the mere presence of such debate speaks to the aura of mystery surrounding these finds. A few go further still, linking the fossils to ancient mythologies or lost civilizations. They speak of early explorers who reported strange insect-like remains or engravings on glacial rocks, long before modern paleontology took hold. These accounts are unverified, scattered in journals and second-hand retellings, but they linger, as myths often do, in the shadows of the unknown. And yet, even without sensationalism, the mystery remains. Why are so many of these fossils found clustered in tight geological zones? Why do some seem to vanish abruptly from the record, with no clear extinction event? And how many more specimens remain hidden, sealed beneath miles of unmapped ice? Antarctica guards its secrets well. The continent's thick ice sheets have shielded vast swaths of fossil-bearing rock from erosion, but also from discovery. Only a tiny percentage of Antarctica's terrain has been surveyed at depth. It's possible, likely even, that more fossil beds lie waiting, preserved in untouched clarity. What stories do they hold? Were these giant insects merely relics of a long-lost climate, frozen snapshots of evolution in motion? Or are they fragments of something more enigmatic, a forgotten chapter in Earth's biological history, written in stone and sealed in ice? As paleontologists chip away at the exposed rock, one careful layer at a time, they are not just uncovering fossils. They are brushing away the edge of a much larger story. A story that hints at life before the cold, at forms beyond the familiar, at a continent that remembers. And as each fossil comes into the light, one question grows louder. What else once walked or flew across this ancient hidden land? As paleontologists delicately unearth the fossilized remains of colossal insects from stone once blanketed in greenery, another kind of memory waits to be read. Not in bone, not in form, but in the orientation of atoms themselves. Antarctica's secrets, it seems, are encoded not only in what it preserved, but in how it aligned. Deep in the trans-Antarctic mountains, where the winds shriek across jagged ridgelines and the ice pulls back to reveal ancient volcanic strata, teams of geologists have spent decades collecting rock samples. At first glance, these are unassuming: dark basalt, layered sediment, hardened lava flows. Yet within these minerals lies a hidden record, a silent archive of Earth's magnetic past. When volcanic rock cools, tiny particles of magnetite within it align with the Earth's magnetic field, freezing in place like microscopic compasses. Over geological time, layer after layer of these frozen magnetic directions build a history, capturing the planet's geomagnetic orientation at the time of formation. These samples, when studied, can reveal a startling truth: that the Earth's magnetic poles have not always been where they are today. This is not speculation, it is fact. Magnetic field reversals, where the north and south magnetic poles swap places, have occurred many times throughout Earth's history. On average, these flips happen every 200,000 to 300,000 years, though the timing is irregular. Some reversals last for thousands of years, others far less. But what makes Antarctica particularly fascinating is that it offers one of the cleanest, least disturbed records of these events, frozen in its rocks, untouched for eons. And among those records are anomalies. Some rock samples recovered from Antarctica's Farrar group formations show rapid transitions in magnetic polarity, far faster than what traditional models would predict. Instead of gradual shifts over thousands of years, these layers suggest that in some instances, the poles may have reversed in mere centuries or even decades. Could Earth's magnetic field flip in a human lifetime? Mainstream geophysics still leans toward slower, more gradual processes. The prevailing theory suggests a churning dynamo of molten iron in Earth's outer core generates the magnetic field. Fluctuations in this movement cause irregularities, weakening, strengthening, or shifting the field's alignment. But even within this framework, some data from Antarctica remains difficult to reconcile. In a core sample collected near Mount Erebus, the continent's most active volcano, geologists found tightly packed layers of volcanic ash with alternating magnetic signatures, occurring across layers only centimeters thick. If these layers do indeed represent separate volcanic events, as the dating suggests, it implies that the magnetic field shifted back and forth multiple times in rapid succession. Why? Some scientists propose that local magnetic anomalies, regions where the field behaves erratically, could skew the record. Others suggest a global geomagnetic excursion, a short-lived disturbance in the magnetic field, rather than a full reversal. These events are known to have occurred elsewhere in the world, such as the La Champ excursion, roughly 41,000 years ago. But Antarctica's record is different, too precise, too localized, too sudden. And the mystery deepens when one considers the potential impacts of such reversals. During a magnetic field flip, the Earth's magnetic shield weakens, leaving the planet more exposed to solar and cosmic radiation. The consequences of such exposure are still being debated: increased mutation rates, climate disruptions, even mass extinctions. Some researchers have pointed to extinction events in the fossil record that loosely correlate with past reversals, but definitive links remain elusive. Could Antarctica hold the missing evidence? Fringe theories have taken this idea and expanded it dramatically. A few suggest that rapid magnetic shifts might not be natural at all, that something, some force, could have interfered with the planet's core or magnetic field. Ancient impacts, lost technologies, even external celestial bodies passing near Earth. These ideas often venture into speculative territory, but they reflect an enduring question. Why do some reversals seem so abrupt? Other theories connect the reversals to sudden crustal movements, a notion not widely accepted but occasionally raised in the context of pole shifts and ancient cataclysms. In these scenarios, the entire outer shell of the Earth might shift in position, redistributing the magnetic field. There is little evidence for such events, but again, Antarctica's role in these discussions is central, because here the rock is still, unweathered, untouched, offering data uncorrupted by human development, agriculture, or war. Here, in the frozen stillness of time, the Earth's magnetic memory remains intact, and it raises questions scientists are still trying to answer. What caused these rapid flips? Could another reversal be on the horizon? And if so, would we be ready? Recent satellite data has shown that the Earth's current magnetic field is weakening, particularly over the South Atlantic. Some researchers wonder if we are entering the early stages of another excursion or reversal. If so, Antarctica may once again become the key to understanding what comes next. For now, the rocks remain silent. But in their atomic structure, they carry stories of planetary transformation, sudden, immense, and still unexplained. The frozen cliffs and ancient lava flows are not just relics of a volcanic past. They are instruments of memory, and they are pointing, still, in unexpected directions. What else lies encoded in Antarctica's magnetic history? What pulses of the planet's heart have we not yet felt? And when the poles next shift, as they inevitably will the answers lie beneath the ice? From the fossilized memory of Earth's shifting magnetic past embedded in Antarctic stone, we now look upward, beyond the frozen terrain, beyond the atmosphere, into the boundless silence of space. But here, too, Antarctica reveals something strange, not in what we see, but in what we receive and fail to receive. At the geographic South Pole, where the sky never truly sets during the austral summer, the horizon spins in slow circles around the zenith. Above this axis of rotation, the stars trace perpetual arcs, and the thin, dry air allows for some of the most pristine astronomical observations on Earth. It is here that massive instruments, radio arrays, microwave telescopes, neutrino detectors, peer out into the depths of space, collecting whispers from distant galaxies, black holes, and cosmic phenomena beyond comprehension. And yet, there is a problem. Signals, clean, expected, mathematically predicted, sometimes flicker when passing over Antarctica. Deep space communications from satellites, probes, and observatories occasionally experience glitching as they transit the polar sky. It's not constant. It's not dramatic. But it's there. Bursts of noise, signal loss, unexplained distortions, phase shifts, anomalies that resist easy explanation. These interruptions have been noted for decades, often dismissed as minor atmospheric interference, instrumentation issues, or geomagnetic disturbances. But recent observations have raised new questions, especially as data inconsistencies begin to align in time and location. Why do certain transmissions degrade only as they cross over the polar region? Why are anomalies sometimes recorded simultaneously by multiple instruments at different stations? And why are they occasionally accompanied by high-energy particle events that seemingly have no known source? Let's start with what's understood. The South Pole is a harsh and complicated environment for signal transmission. The Earth's magnetic field converges at the poles, creating a funnel through which high-energy particles from the solar wind more easily enter the atmosphere. This interaction gives rise to auroras and creates fluctuating layers of ionization in the upper atmosphere. These layers can reflect, absorb, or refract radio waves, sometimes unpredictably. It's a phenomenon well known in polar science. But not all glitches are atmospheric. Some occur during clear, geomagnetically quiet conditions, when ionospheric disturbance is minimal. In these cases, data streams become corrupted in ways that don't correspond with known interference patterns. The glitches have shown up in satellite-to-satellite communication, deep space probe telemetry, and even data transmissions from Earth-based radio telescopes. In 2016, a research team operating a low-frequency listening post near Dome A, the highest point on the Antarctic plateau, reported consistent packet loss in deep space signal reception during specific alignment windows with the galactic center. This loss was not due to equipment failure. It repeated under different setups, on different days, using different antennae. The signal was clean before entering the polar sky, and fragmented when it emerged. Could there be something in Antarctica itself that causes this disruption? One possibility is subsurface reflection, the idea that certain radar or radio waves might bounce off features beneath the ice, interfering with passing signals. The continent is known to host massive subglacial lakes, ancient mountain ranges, and geological formations whose electromagnetic properties are still poorly understood. Some researchers speculate that anomalies in crustal composition, especially those rich in metal or conductive minerals, could be partially responsible. But that doesn't explain the directionality of the disruptions. If the glitches originated from below, they would likely affect outgoing signals. Instead, the majority of anomalies are detected in incoming transmissions, as if something above or within the polar atmosphere itself is modulating them. Then there are the more speculative theories. Some have proposed that the pole may act as a kind of natural lens, a zone where gravity, magnetism, and Earth's rotation conspire to create subtle distortions in space-time. Could this region, theoretically, amplify background noise or redirect faint emissions not usually visible elsewhere? Others wonder if the glitches are signatures of interference not yet understood. Advanced artificial signals? Deliberate jamming? A misinterpreted form of natural intelligence? In 2020, a fringe publication suggested that certain deep space signals arriving from intergalactic space might be refracted or even redirected by something in Earth's polar region. The idea bordered on the fantastic, involving gravitational anomalies or buried technologies from a prehistoric age. No evidence supported these claims. Still, they reflect a persistent undercurrent of curiosity. Why Antarctica? Why is it that across so many domains, geology, biology, electromagnetism, anomalies seem to concentrate here? Could the glitching of deep space signals be another piece of the puzzle? A subtle, flickering symptom of a greater truth? Or is it simply the result of natural extremes, stretched to their limits? The South Pole, unlike any other point on Earth, remains both a vantage and a veil. It offers scientists a clear view into the universe. Yet sometimes, just sometimes, the universe seems to look back with static in its eyes. The glitches haven't stopped. If anything, they've become more interesting as technology improves. So, what are we really detecting? Are these just quirks in our instruments? Or are they echoes of something deeper? In a place where the stars never rise or set, and where the sky spins forever around a single, unmoving point, perhaps the answers lie not in what we're looking for, but in what unexpectedly finds us. What, if anything, is hiding in the noise, and how long has it been trying to speak? The data continues to stream in, and somewhere above Antarctica, it skips. As the polar sky crackles with distorted signals and unanswered questions, we lower our gaze once more, this time not to the icy ground beneath our feet, but to the sky above it. From orbit, Antarctica appears as a colossal white silence, a nearly featureless expanse stretching outward from the South Pole in all directions. But under the watchful eyes of satellites, that silence is beginning to speak in strange and unexpected geometries. It began quietly in the late 2000s. Analysts examining high-resolution satellite imagery over remote portions of East Antarctica began to notice something peculiar etched faintly into the ice sheet: patterns. Not the typical linear fractures or glacial flow lines one might expect, but repeating hexagonal formations, some stretching for miles. At first glance, they resembled natural surface undulations, perhaps caused by wind erosion or ice movement. But on closer inspection, the shapes were too precise. Six-sided geometries, uniform edges, tiling patterns with near-perfect spacing, visible only from high above and only under specific lighting and snow conditions. What could cause this? In nature, hexagons are not uncommon. They appear in the cracking of mud flats, in basalt columns, even in cloud formations around polar vortices. In each case, the pattern emerges from physical stress, temperature variation, or fluid dynamics seeking balance. Some scientists suggested that the hexagons seen in Antarctica might be a kind of thermodynamic tiling, the ice responding to deep thermal stresses, perhaps linked to subsurface geothermal features. But others weren't so sure. The patterns didn't align with known heat flows or bedrock maps. They didn't consistently follow the contours of glacier movement. And in some cases, they appeared in regions where the ice was supposedly stable, undisturbed, and isolated for thousands of years. What, then, could be imposing such order on such a chaotic environment? In 2012, a cluster of hexagonal shapes was recorded by Landsat imagery over Princess Elizabeth Land, just inland from the eastern coast. The formation stretched across nearly 15 square miles and consisted of repeating shapes, some over 200 meters across, barely raised above the surrounding ice. From the ground, they would be nearly invisible, but from orbit, they revealed a kind of geometry beneath the ice. Were these patterns the remnants of ancient climate cycles? The result of seasonal freeze-thaw boundaries deep within the firn layers? Or something else? As more satellite images were released over the next decade, similar hexagonal formations were quietly catalogued in at least 3 other regions of East Antarctica, each time accompanied by sparse metadata and minimal explanation. In some cases, the patterns disappeared entirely in the following year's images, as if wiped away by a thin layer of new snow or a slight shift in the ice sheet's surface. But not always. Some reappeared, slightly altered, slightly shifted. In 2017, a team of independent researchers used commercial imaging satellites to resurvey an area where hexagon patterns had once been noted. They found not only that the pattern remained, but that it had expanded, with new cells forming at the periphery. The growth was subtle, but measurable. Could ice itself be self-organizing into hexagonal structures under the right conditions? One theory draws on the concept of convection cells, hexagonal patterns that form in fluids when heat rises from below. On a microscopic level, ice crystals themselves grow in hexagonal lattices, dictated by the molecular structure of water. Could these vast surface hexagons be a scaled-up echo of that intrinsic order? Alternatively, some glaciologists proposed that under specific environmental pressures, wind shear, sublimation, solar radiation, the surface of the ice might erode unevenly, producing a patterned matrix that mimics a honeycomb. But again, the regularity of the shapes defies easy categorization. Which brings us, inevitably, to the more speculative voices. Among fringe theorists, the hexagon formations have been seized upon as possible evidence of ancient megastructures, geometric alignments, or even non-human activity. The logic is simple, if not fully supported. Nature rarely works in right angles or repeating geometries over large scales. So when it appears to, the suggestion is that something intelligent may be involved. These theories cite similar phenomena elsewhere on Earth: the hexagonal storm on Saturn's North Pole, the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland, and even the Nazca Lines of Peru. Could the Antarctic hexagons be remnants of something buried, something activating, or something slowly revealing itself through the thinning ice? Most scientists reject such ideas, pointing to the lack of physical evidence beneath the patterns. Ground-penetrating radar surveys of some of the sites have yielded no clear subsurface anomalies, though access is limited, and deep ice scans are costly, difficult, and politically sensitive in remote zones. Still, the patterns are there, visible, documented, persistent, and as of yet, unexplained. Why does Antarctica continue to yield such perfectly imperfect mysteries? Why, in one of the most isolated and lifeless regions of the planet, do we find patterns that suggest design? Is it a coincidence of nature? A result of hidden geological forces? Or is Antarctica once again whispering something older, something we're not yet ready to hear? The hexagons are just one more puzzle in a landscape already thick with unanswered questions. And as satellites continue to scan the frozen continent, pixel by pixel, year by year, the ice itself seems to offer a subtle challenge. Look closer, but know that not everything will be found. And somewhere within those silent, six-sided traces, the question lingers: what intelligence, natural or otherwise, once left its signature on this frozen, forgotten world? As satellite images reveal silent patterns etched across the ice, hexagons that seem to defy natural expectation, we are reminded that Antarctica's mysteries are not only written on the surface. Many are buried far below, embedded in ice that has remained untouched for hundreds of thousands of years. To find them, we must listen, not with ears, but with instruments tuned to the language of the deep. The method is simple in concept. Transmit radio waves downward into the ice and listen for what returns. These ice-penetrating radar systems have become one of the most powerful tools in polar science. With them, researchers can map layers of compacted snow and fern, trace the undulations of the ice sheet's interior, and locate hidden lakes and buried mountain ranges. But sometimes, the radar brings back something unexpected. In the frozen interior of East Antarctica, near the Dome Sea Research Zone, a series of radar surveys in the early 2000s detected unusual echoes from deep beneath the surface, reflections that didn't match any known structure or composition. These anomalies, faint and scattered, appeared at depths between 2,000 and 4,000 meters. They weren't from the bedrock, they weren't from subglacial lakes, and they weren't consistent with the known stratigraphy of the ice sheet. Instead, these signals came back fragmented, warped, and curiously delayed, as if bouncing off something that shifted subtly over time or something with an unusual electromagnetic signature. At first, the scientific explanation leaned toward simple interference. Radar pulses can bounce between multiple ice layers, creating false echoes. Temperature gradients or impurities in the ice can scatter the signal. But further investigations, conducted in collaboration between European and American teams, revealed that the echoes had patterns, repeating at consistent intervals, suggesting a form or boundary hidden within the ice itself. What could it be? One possibility was ancient crevasse fields, sealed and compressed over millennia. As glaciers flow, they form deep cracks, crevasses, that can later freeze shut and be buried. These might still reflect radar if they were filled with air or brine. But in this case, the echoes came from locations where the ice should be homogeneous, areas with no known glacial movement or tectonic disturbance. Then came the frequency anomalies. In 2015, a new generation of multi-frequency radar systems allowed scientists to probe deeper, with greater resolution. What they found was even more perplexing. Some of the echoes returned stronger at lower frequencies, opposite of what was expected for ice structures, which typically absorb low-frequency waves. It was as if the signals were being amplified at depth, or were interacting with something not purely physical. Some theorized subglacial water pockets, trapped brine lenses suspended within the ice. These can reflect radar differently, especially if infused with salts or minerals. Yet even this explanation proved insufficient. The radar profiles didn't match known brine behaviors. There were no heat sources nearby, and the formations were too stable, remaining in place across multiple seasons. Others speculated about fossilized biological matter, perhaps microbial mats or ancient sediment layers, entombed during a warmer era and now encased in solid ice. The echoes, in this theory, would be bouncing off organic rich material with slightly different dielectric properties. That might explain the strange radar responses. But again, no cores from the area had recovered anything to support the idea. Then, the theories grew more bold. A few researchers, quietly, cautiously, began to suggest the presence of non-natural geometry at depth. Certain signal returns seemed to outline angular formations, not the rounded or chaotic forms typical of natural glacial features. Could these be remnants of a volcanic intrusion, long buried? Or something else, something more structured? In the absence of direct visual confirmation, speculation inevitably expanded. Could these be the ruins of an ancient civilization, lost to time and ice? Could they be artifacts of an unknown technological origin? Could the echoes be caused not by solid objects at all, but by fields, standing waves, electromagnetic interference, or phenomena we don't yet understand? Fringe theories leapt at the opportunity. Some connected the echoes to rumors of lost underground bases, extraterrestrial involvement, or even ancient energy networks beneath the Earth's poles. While lacking evidence, these ideas captured the imagination and pointed to a deeper truth. We still don't know what lies beneath Antarctica's ice. Radar echoes are, by nature, elusive. They do not show us pictures, only hints, delays, strengths, shapes in the data. Interpretation is part science, part inference. But when multiple surveys detect the same echo in the same place across different years and instruments, the mystery deepens. Efforts to drill into these anomalous regions have so far been limited. The cost, the remoteness, and the political complications of Antarctic treaties make such expeditions daunting. Ice cores provide some context, but rarely reach the depths where the strangest echoes dwell. So the signals remain, echoing quietly in data archives, revisited by teams hoping for clarity. What are they bouncing off? Why do they behave the way they do? And why do some seem to move? Are we hearing the breath of ancient ice shifting in the dark? Or the subtle signature of something else, something that doesn't quite fit? For now, the echoes are all we have, but they are persistent, and they are not yet understood. As long as Antarctica remains frozen and largely inaccessible, these sonic fingerprints, faint and puzzling, will continue to raise questions. They suggest that somewhere in the continent's deep interior, there is something unusual, something worth listening to a little more closely. And so we return to the silence. Beneath the radar waves, beneath the crushing weight of millennia-old ice, something still answers, in echoes we cannot yet explain. What is it trying to tell us? And are we ready to hear it? From faint echoes hidden in the ice to the unseen voids they seem to mark, we now descend further, into the liquid realm beneath the ice itself. A realm cloaked in perpetual darkness, untouched by sunlight for millions of years. It is here, below nearly a kilometer of solid glacial ice, that one of Antarctica's most curious features lies hidden: subglacial Lake Whillans. Located beneath the slow-moving Whillans ice stream, near the southeastern edge of the Ross Ice Shelf, Lake Whillans is not a lake in the traditional sense. It is a pressurized chamber of water, sealed from the surface by hundreds of meters of ice, kept in a liquid state not by sunlight, but by the Earth's own geothermal warmth and the immense pressure of the ice above. Yet, what makes Lake Whillans stand out from the more than 400 subglacial lakes known to exist beneath Antarctica is not merely its accessibility or its microbial life, it is its shape. When radar imaging and seismic mapping first revealed the contours of Lake Whillans in the early 2000s, glaciologists were surprised by the clarity of its boundaries. Unlike most subglacial lakes, which form in irregular pockets or winding channels, Whillans appeared to be unusually symmetrical. Its perimeter was traced in what looked like straight lines, and some data suggested right-angled boundaries, an anomaly in a setting governed by natural pressure and ice flow. Could a lake formed under such extreme and random conditions really develop geometric features? The standard explanation, of course, points to the bedrock topography. Beneath Antarctica's ice lies a buried world of ridges, valleys, and basins, relics of a long eroded continent. It's possible that glacial erosion, combined with the weight and movement of the ice above, carved out a symmetrical basin into which meltwater flowed. Yet, even in that scenario, the level of angular precision seen in some radar cross-sections is difficult to reconcile with natural forces alone. Further intrigue came in 2013, when scientists from the Whillans Ice Stream Subglacial Access Research Drilling (WISARD) project successfully drilled through the ice and lowered instruments into the lake. What they found was astonishing. Liquid water, rich in dissolved gases, and hosting a diverse community of microbial life. The discovery confirmed that life could survive, even thrive, in complete isolation from the surface, without light, without fresh nutrients, and without oxygen as we know it. But again, there was something odd. Sediment cores retrieved from the lake bed suggested that parts of the basin were unusually flat, as if leveled. Layers of fine-grained particles rested atop what appeared to be hard, possibly lithified surfaces, rather than soft or irregular sediments common in glacial outwash environments. Some areas returned sonar echoes that hinted at subsurface voids, small chamber-like zones that did not immediately conform to expectations. Could this geometry be a fluke, or was something else shaping the lake from beneath? In private, some researchers wondered whether these symmetrical features might be signs of ancient tectonic structures, perhaps deeply buried faults or collapsed lava tubes. Others speculated that the flatness of the lake bed might hint at a previous surface exposure, a time when the lake, or something in its place, once lay above the ice and had been sealed away by successive glaciations. And then, more speculative voices began to whisper. Fringe theorists seized upon the angular patterns and straight-line radar returns as evidence of something artificial, a buried structure perhaps, or a system of engineered channels beneath the ice. Some pointed to supposed gridded patterns seen in older satellite scans of the region. Others linked the geometry to claims of buried installations or megalithic remnants, echoing long-discredited theories about lost civilizations in polar regions. No serious glaciologist endorses such claims. The weight of evidence still favors natural formation shaped by unique pressures and flows over immense timescales. But the truth is, we don't know for certain. The data is still sparse. The lake has only been sampled in one location. The full shape, composition, and behavior of Whillans remain largely unknown. Newer remote sensing has deepened the mystery. Some radar scans now suggest that water levels in Lake Whillans rise and fall in rhythmic pulses, feeding into subglacial rivers and possibly connecting with other lakes beneath the ice. This plumbing system stretches hundreds of kilometers, far more complex than once believed, and yet, in Whillans, the geometric features persist. Could the pattern be the fingerprint of glacial hydraulics, organizing themselves into predictable flow patterns over time? Could it be that the bedrock beneath the lake is shaped by ancient tectonic tiling, its cracks filled with water, mimicking order where none was intended? Or is it possible, however unlikely, that we are misreading the signal? That beneath this remote and sealed world lies something whose form does not fit the standard models? Perhaps the answer is buried not in the lake bed, but in time itself. What forces, over the past several million years, have acted here, beneath a continent largely forgotten, isolated, and sealed by ice? Could Lake Whillans hold secrets older than the ice itself? Structures, patterns, or even processes we've yet to encounter anywhere else on Earth? For now, the strange symmetry of its boundaries remains unexplained. The lake sleeps, far below the reach of the sun, its surface untouched by wind, its depths unseen by human eyes. And yet, through ice and silence, it sends a signal, a pattern that does not quite fit what we expect. So we must ask, is it coincidence or something more? As the instruments continue to listen, to map, to reach into the ice, the mystery of Lake Whillans remains unresolved. And in its geometry, so still, so precise, we are left to wonder, what else might be waiting in the dark beneath the pressure, beyond the reach of our understanding? The journey into Antarctica continues. As we leave behind the silent symmetry of subglacial Lake Whillans, the ice reminds us that its mysteries are not always ancient or buried deep beneath kilometers of glacial cover. Some enigmas unfold in real time, in plain sight, only to vanish without a trace. High on the East Antarctic ice sheet, where the wind sculpts the surface into blinding whiteness and the sky seems to stretch into forever, something peculiar has been happening. Here, in one of the coldest, most remote regions on Earth, scientists have documented a phenomenon both sudden and strangely silent. Lakes of surface meltwater that appear and then disappear overnight. From the vantage point of satellites, it begins innocently enough, a brilliant patch of turquoise, a shallow basin of meltwater pooling across the ice during the peak of the brief austral summer. These supraglacial lakes, as they are known, form when sunlight warms the ice just enough to allow surface melting, often along fault lines or shallow depressions. They are typically small, ephemeral, and relatively well understood. But some of them, larger, deeper, and more isolated, have drawn a different kind of attention. In 2007, researchers tracking seasonal melt activity observed a supraglacial lake in East Antarctica that had accumulated over 12 billion liters of meltwater, roughly equivalent to 4,800 Olympic-sized swimming pools. One day, it was there, a shimmering sapphire oval stretching across the white expanse. By the next morning, it was gone. Not frozen over, not evaporated. Gone. This wasn't an isolated incident. Over the following decade, glaciologists recorded a growing number of these sudden disappearances. Lakes not gradually draining or sublimating away, but vanishing within a matter of hours, leaving behind only a shallow depression in the ice and, sometimes, a faint circular scar. What could cause such an event? The prevailing theory points to a process known as hydrofracturing, when the immense weight of surface meltwater forces a vertical crack or crevasse through the ice sheet, reaching all the way to the bedrock below. Once this channel forms, the water rushes downward in a massive pulse, draining the lake in an instant. The force of this drainage is staggering. In one case, it was estimated that a lake discharged its entire volume in less than 3 hours, with water flowing through the ice at rates comparable to Niagara Falls. But questions remain. Why do these fractures happen in some locations and not others? Why do some lakes reappear seasonally, while others vanish and never return? And most intriguingly, what happens to the water once it reaches the base? Here, the mystery deepens. Some researchers suggest that these sudden pulses of water lubricate the base of the glacier, accelerating ice flow in unpredictable ways. Others propose that the water may feed into existing subglacial lakes or create entirely new ones, reshaping Antarctica's hidden hydrological network in ways we barely understand. But there are anomalies. In a few cases, post-drainage radar imaging has failed to locate where the water went. There is no clear channel, no expanding lake beneath. It's as if the water simply vanished into the ice. Could the meltwater be infiltrating deep fissures in the bedrock itself? Or are there porous zones within the ice that absorb and hold water like a sponge? Some fringe theories have gone further, linking these vanishing lakes to hollow ice chambers or speculated networks of subsurface tunnels, perhaps remnants of past geothermal activity, or something more unusual. While there is no physical evidence supporting these ideas, the sheer scale and speed of the events invite questions that science has not yet fully answered. There is also the troubling possibility that climate change may be amplifying the phenomenon. Warmer air temperatures are creating more surface meltwater. And as lakes grow in size and depth, the pressure they exert on the ice increases, making sudden drainage events more likely. But are we witnessing a new phase in Antarctica's evolution, or the reactivation of a long dormant process? Some ice cores extracted near former lake sites have shown unusual layering, suggesting that similar drainage events may have occurred thousands of years ago, possibly even during previous interglacial periods. Could this be part of a natural cycle, driven by deep Earth or orbital mechanics? Or have we only now begun to observe them because of the precision of our satellites? Another mystery lies in the shape of the lakes themselves. Many of the vanished lakes leave behind circular or hexagonal impressions, patterns that echo the strange geometries seen elsewhere across the Antarctic surface. Coincidence? Perhaps. But taken together, these repeating forms raise a subtle but provocative question. Does the ice know something we don't? The Antarctic ice sheet is not static. It breathes, it moves, it hides, and sometimes it reacts in ways that are neither random nor easily explained. Meltwater lakes that vanish in silence, leaving no visible path, no seismic event, no clear explanation, are not just geophysical curiosities. They are reminders. Reminders that even in a world of cutting-edge instrumentation and high-resolution imaging, nature still has places where it keeps its secrets well. What lies beneath the spot where the water disappeared? Where does it go? And what might it disturb on its journey? In the end, all we're left with is the scar on the ice, a pale depression etched into the white, like a forgotten footprint. The lake is gone, but the mystery remains. And as each summer comes and goes, more lakes form, and some of them, inevitably, will vanish. Will we ever understand the full story? Or is Antarctica still holding back, layer by layer, fracture by fracture, something we are not yet ready to find? As sudden as a vanished lake and just as haunting, some disappearances in Antarctica leave not a depression in the ice, but a silence in history. From water that drains without trace, we now shift to a mystery marked not by melting, but by metal and absence. It was early September 1965. The end of the austral winter still gripped Antarctica in its frozen grasp. The sun, which had not risen in months over the polar plateau, was just beginning its slow return. Temperatures were still punishing, winds unrelenting. Yet on that day, a Lockheed C-47 Skytrain, an Argentine military transport plane, lifted off from the icy runway near Base General Belgrano, carrying a small crew and a payload of supplies. Its destination, another Argentine outpost. The flight was supposed to be routine, short, safe. But the aircraft was never seen again. No mayday, no distress signal, no confirmed wreckage. Just radio silence. At first, the loss seemed explainable. Antarctica is a notoriously dangerous environment for aviation. Winds can change without warning. Whiteout conditions can disorient even experienced pilots, and magnetic anomalies near the pole can interfere with navigation. The C-47, while rugged and dependable, was flying in a region still largely unmapped, especially in the 1960s. But as days turned into weeks and then months, search teams combed the projected flight path without success. No debris, no fuel slicks, no disturbed snow, just an unbroken expanse of white. What happened to the aircraft? Official records note that it was likely caught in a sudden storm, forced down onto a crevassed or unstable ice field, and buried within hours by snow and drifting winds. In Antarctica, that's all it takes. The ice can swallow a plane whole, concealing it for decades, even centuries. This, perhaps, is the simplest explanation. But this particular disappearance refuses to rest quietly. Over the years, conflicting accounts have emerged. Some claim that an unconfirmed signal, weak and garbled, was picked up days later by a Chilean base hundreds of kilometers away. Others allege that strange radar reflections were observed over the Weddell Sea shortly after the disappearance, hinting at a possible diversion from the original flight path. Still others whisper of classified reports, sightings of dark, fast-moving objects in the vicinity. Nothing ever verified. Nothing officially acknowledged. What makes the mystery more compelling is the location. The flight path traced a region of Antarctica, long associated with unusual readings. Geomagnetic anomalies, unexplained static bursts, and erratic compass behavior. The C-47, according to some reconstructed trajectories, may have passed over or near one of these zones. Is it possible that the aircraft's instruments were disrupted? That a navigational error led the plane into a dead zone, where orientation was lost and communication rendered impossible? Then there's the deeper speculation. In recent decades, certain fringe circles have linked the 1965 disappearance to broader, more arcane claims about Antarctica. The alleged presence of hidden structures beneath the ice, the possible remnants of wartime installations, or even unknown subterranean cavities emitting strange energy fields. While these theories stretch the boundaries of accepted science, they highlight one central truth. We still know remarkably little about large parts of Antarctica, especially the vast and largely untraveled interior. Could the C-47 have stumbled upon something it was not meant to see? Or was it simply a victim of the same ancient, indifferent forces that govern the ice and sky? Wind, cold, gravity, time? In 2010, a satellite scan using radar interferometry picked up an anomalous shape beneath the ice sheet in the general region of the aircraft's last known position. At first, researchers believed it to be a rock outcrop, but its sharp lines and metallic signature raised eyebrows. Follow-up missions, however, were inconclusive. Snow accumulation had increased, and shifting ice made the object nearly impossible to relocate. Some wondered, was it the lost C-47? And if so, why hadn't it broken apart? To this day, the Argentine military officially lists the flight as missing. No remains have ever been found. No families received closure. And yet, every few years, a new effort is quietly launched by a satellite team, a private expedition, or an independent researcher to try and find the final resting place of the aircraft. But the ice has a way of hiding things. In Antarctica, time is not marked by years, but by layers. Each snowfall compressing the past a little deeper, sealing away moments in silence. Planes, people, even history itself can vanish, leaving behind only questions and a gap in the record. What causes a metal aircraft, with skilled pilots and functioning instruments, to vanish without trace in a relatively short flight? Was it weather? A hidden crevasse? A sudden system failure? Or something stranger? Could there be forces in Antarctica, magnetic, geophysical, or otherwise, that we still don't fully understand? The fate of the Argentine C-47 remains one of the continent's lesser-known puzzles. Overshadowed by more sensational theories, it lingers quietly, waiting. Perhaps the wreckage still rests beneath a shifting ice sheet, only meters below the surface. Or perhaps deeper, buried under decades of accumulation, slowly becoming part of the glacier itself. Until it's found, if it's ever found. This is one more enigma etched into Antarctica's frozen heart. One more reminder that even modern machines can be humbled here. One more echo in a land that does not forget, but does not reveal. And so we ask, what really happened on that cold September day in 1965? And how many more answers lie just out of reach, frozen under layers of time and silence? From the silence of a vanished aircraft to the strange forces that may govern Antarctica's skies, our focus now lifts from ice and loss to the atmosphere above. Because while the continent often hides its secrets below the surface, sometimes it reveals a mystery high overhead, in radiant curtains of color that should not exist. It begins with a sky like black velvet, crisp, absolute, unshaken by light pollution or civilization. Here, in Antarctica's interior, where the air is thin and bone-cold, the night sky stretches over endless plains of white. In this desolate beauty, the Aurora Australis, the southern lights, can be among the most dazzling sights on Earth. They shimmer in waves of green, blue, and violet. They pulse across the horizon in slow undulations, like the heartbeat of the planet itself. And for decades, scientists have understood their cause. Streams of charged particles hurled from the sun during solar storms, slamming into Earth's magnetic field and igniting the upper atmosphere. But in Antarctica, not all auroras follow the rules. In 2015, a team of researchers stationed at Concordia Station, a remote Franco-Italian base on the Antarctic plateau, reported witnessing a luminous auroral display during a time of complete solar calm. Instruments confirmed it. No coronal mass ejection, no solar flare, no increase in solar wind. And yet, overhead, the sky danced. It wasn't the first time. Archived data going back to the 1970s reveals similar anomalies, isolated events where auroras formed with no clear trigger from the sun. The phenomena seemed more frequent at higher latitudes, especially near the south magnetic pole. Some were faint glows, others were vivid bands, visible even to the naked eye. So, if not the sun, then what? One theory posits that these anomalous auroras are linked to internal geomagnetic disturbances, fluctuations from deep within Earth's molten core that can momentarily alter the magnetic field and simulate the effects of external particle bombardment. But these disturbances are poorly understood and rarely strong enough to cause a visible aurora. Could the auroras be driven by cosmic rays, high-energy particles from outside the solar system? Perhaps. But cosmic rays tend to interact differently with Earth's magnetosphere. They create secondary radiation, not concentrated light displays. Moreover, the timing and shape of these mystery auroras don't fully align with expected cosmic ray behavior. Then there is the idea of localized plasma waves generated within the magnetosphere itself, electromagnetic energy moving in spirals around the pole, triggering isolated reactions in the ionosphere. This would suggest that Antarctica, due to its magnetic position, may act as a kind of resonance chamber, amplifying subtle changes in the planet's electromagnetic environment. But even this leaves key questions unanswered. Why do these auroras appear so rarely? Why only in specific regions, often over areas where the magnetic field is already unstable or distorted? And why, in some cases, do they form geometrically, radiating out in symmetrical arcs or hexagonal patterns? In 1998, a British Antarctic survey expedition near Halley Research Station recorded a particularly unusual display, an auroral event shaped like a spiral, centered directly over a known magnetic anomaly in the Weddell Sea sector. The event lasted several minutes, then dissipated. Again, there was no corresponding solar activity. The mystery grew stranger in 2020, when satellites from the European Space Agency's Swarm constellation detected a sudden concentration of charged particles over East Antarctica, coinciding with a burst of light in the atmosphere visible from 2 ground stations. The particle activity was brief and intense, but it originated from within Earth's own field, not from space. Is it possible that Antarctica is host to geoelectrical phenomena we have not yet fully identified? Some researchers have even wondered if certain regions of the ice sheet, rich in crystalline rock and deep subglacial lakes, might act as conductive lenses, focusing or amplifying natural electromagnetic currents. In this model, Antarctica would be less a passive observer and more an active participant in the production of auroras. Others have gone further, proposing speculative ideas that border on the fringe. Could ancient structures beneath the ice be interfering with magnetic lines? Could tectonic stresses, massive pressure along fault zones beneath the crust, generate bursts of electromagnetic energy capable of triggering atmospheric reactions? Some point to similar phenomena in earthquake-prone regions, where earthquake lights, brief luminous events, have been seen before major seismic activity. Could Antarctica, far from being geologically dead, be generating its own version of this electromagnetic release? There is, of course, no definitive evidence of any artificial cause, but the persistence of unexplained auroras over certain Antarctic sectors and the lack of consistent solar triggers keeps the question open. And there's one more wrinkle. According to declassified logs from the Cold War era, both American and Soviet research bases reported interference with radio equipment during these auroral anomalies, beyond what would be expected from typical geomagnetic storms. In a few cases, instruments detected extremely low-frequency, ELF signals, often associated with submarine communication or deep Earth resonance. What was causing these disruptions? Could it be that Antarctica, quiet and uninhabited as it may seem, occasionally emits a signal of its own? Or are we simply misreading natural processes, overlaying mystery where there is only complexity? For now, the data is incomplete. Satellites record, sensors listen, and cameras capture streaks of light arcing across the polar sky. Unexplained, unpredicted, and unresolved. They appear without warning, and vanish without trace. Auroras without a source. Light without a cause. In a continent where so much is hidden, perhaps it should not surprise us that even the skies above Antarctica hold secrets of their own. So we ask, what power stirs in the silence when the sun is quiet and yet the heavens ignite? And what might these strange lights be trying to reveal, if only we knew how to listen? The lights fade from the polar sky, and silence descends once more. But here in the heart of East Antarctica, silence is not merely the absence of sound, it becomes a presence of its own. A weight in the air, a boundary beyond which even machines seem to hesitate. We now move toward the Dome Fuji Plateau, one of the coldest and most remote places on Earth. Perched high on the East Antarctic ice sheet, at over 3,800 meters above sea level, Dome Fuji is a frozen summit surrounded by nothing but white in every direction. Temperatures here regularly plunge below -80 degrees Celsius. There are no permanent outposts, no animals, no visible landmarks, only ice, wind, and an uncanny stillness. And yet, somewhere within this isolated expanse, researchers have noted a phenomenon both elusive and unsettling, an area informally referred to as the Zone of Silence. It isn't marked on any map. No coordinates have been publicly confirmed, but scattered among expedition logs and anecdotal reports is a consistent pattern, a stretch of land somewhere near Dome Fuji where radio signals weaken, satellite transmissions falter, and even acoustic recordings return unusually low ambient noise, lower than what would be expected in the already near-silent Antarctic interior. The first mentions came quietly. In the late 1990s, during a Japanese ice core drilling operation, technicians reported unexplained signal loss while transmitting environmental data back to satellite relays. The equipment had worked flawlessly at other sites, but within a narrow corridor southeast of Dome Fuji, telemetry became erratic. No solar storms, no mechanical fault, just an inexplicable drop in electromagnetic responsiveness. At the time, it was written off as a fluke, a result of antenna misalignment or interference from the ice surface. But then came a second incident, and a third. Eventually, the pattern became too difficult to ignore. So what could cause such a phenomenon in an area devoid of infrastructure, electricity, or man-made interference? The most straightforward explanation lies in the ionospheric conditions above Antarctica. The continent's high latitude places it under a portion of the magnetosphere prone to natural radio scattering. But this doesn't fully account for the localized nature of the silence. Other regions at similar altitude and latitude do not report the same consistent blackout zones. Could there be something about the topography beneath the ice? Radar surveys of the Dome Fuji region have revealed a vast subglacial basin beneath the ice sheet, one of the largest in East Antarctica. This hidden landscape, buried beneath thousands of meters of ice, includes ancient bedrock formations, deep valleys, and unexplored caverns. Some geophysicists speculate that certain mineral deposits, particularly those rich in iron or nickel, might distort magnetic fields in localized areas, creating blind spots for radio waves. Others suggest the possibility of ice crystal alignment. Under immense pressure, glacial ice can behave in unusual ways. Its internal structure may become anisotropic, meaning it transmits electromagnetic energy differently depending on direction. Could the ice near Dome Fuji be acting like a natural insulator, selectively dampening signals? Still, even these theories leave questions unanswered. In 2005, a French atmospheric research team attempting balloon-borne measurements over the region found their onboard instruments glitching when they passed over the same silent area, only to resume functioning normally once they had drifted a few kilometers beyond it. Data loss was not due to atmospheric opacity or equipment failure. Something in the space directly above the zone was interfering. More recently, remote ground sensors attempting to monitor infrasonic activity, low-frequency acoustic waves below the threshold of human hearing, have returned oddly flat data from within the zone. No seismic rumbles, no ice shifts, no wind resonance, just a kind of acoustic void. Why would a naturally active continent, home to creaking glaciers, shifting snow masses, and swirling katabatic winds, go so quiet in this one place? Some propose that it's merely a combination of extreme conditions: ultra-dry air, layered ice, damping vibrations, and the sheer absence of biological life. In other words, a perfect storm of silence. nothing more. But there are those who think the silence might be hiding something. Some fringe theories link the zone of silence to a supposed global pattern of dead zones. Places like the Zona del Silencio in northern Mexico or parts of Siberia where electromagnetic interference and wildlife anomalies have been reported. Could Dome Fuji be Antarctica's counterpart in a... The lights fade from the polar sky, and silence descends once more. But here in the heart of East Antarctica, silence is not merely the absence of sound, it becomes a presence of its own. A weight in the air, a boundary beyond which even machines seem to hesitate. We now move toward the Dome Fuji Plateau, one of the coldest and most remote places on Earth. Perched high on the East Antarctic ice sheet, at over 3,800 meters above sea level, Dome Fuji is a frozen summit surrounded by nothing but white in every direction. Temperatures here regularly plunge below -80 degrees Celsius. There are no permanent outposts, no animals, no visible landmarks, only ice, wind, and an uncanny stillness. And yet, somewhere within this isolated expanse, researchers have noted a phenomenon both elusive and unsettling, an area informally referred to as the Zone of Silence. It isn't marked on any map. No coordinates have been publicly confirmed. But scattered among expedition logs and anecdotal reports is a consistent pattern, a stretch of land, somewhere near Dome Fuji, where radio signals weaken, satellite transmissions falter, and even acoustic recordings return unusually low ambient noise, lower than what would be expected in the already near-silent Antarctic interior. The first mentions came quietly. In the late 1990s, during a Japanese ice core drilling operation, technicians reported unexplained signal loss while transmitting environmental data back to satellite relays. The equipment had worked flawlessly at other sites, but within a narrow corridor southeast of Dome Fuji, telemetry became erratic. No solar storms, no mechanical fault, just an inexplicable drop in electromagnetic responsiveness. At the time, it was written off as a fluke, a result of antenna misalignment or interference from the ice surface. But then came a second incident, and a third. Eventually, the pattern became too difficult to ignore. So what could cause such a phenomenon in an area devoid of infrastructure, electricity, or man-made interference? The most straightforward explanation lies in the ionospheric conditions above Antarctica. The continent's high latitude places it under a portion of the magnetosphere prone to natural radio scattering. But this doesn't fully account for the localized nature of the silence. Other regions at similar altitude and latitude do not report the same consistent blackout zones. Could there be something about the topography beneath the ice? Radar surveys of the Dome Fuji region have revealed a vast subglacial basin beneath the ice sheet, one of the largest in East Antarctica. This hidden landscape, buried beneath thousands of meters of ice, includes ancient bedrock formations, deep valleys, and unexplored caverns. Some geophysicists speculate that certain mineral deposits, particularly those rich in iron or nickel, might distort magnetic fields in localized areas, creating blind spots for radio waves. Others suggest the possibility of ice crystal alignment. Under immense pressure, glacial ice can behave in unusual ways. Its internal structure may become anisotropic, meaning it transmits electromagnetic energy differently depending on direction. Could the ice near Dome Fuji be acting like a natural insulator, selectively dampening signals? Still, even these theories leave questions unanswered. In 2005, a French atmospheric research team attempting balloon-borne measurements over the region found their onboard instruments glitching when they passed over the same silent area, only to resume functioning normally once they had drifted a few kilometers beyond it. Data loss was not due to atmospheric opacity or equipment failure. Something in the space directly above the zone was interfering. More recently, Remote ground sensors attempting to monitor infrasonic activity, low-frequency acoustic waves below the threshold of human hearing, have returned oddly flat data from within the zone. No seismic rumbles, no ice shifts, no wind resonance. Just a kind of acoustic void. Why would a naturally active continent, home to creaking glaciers, shifting snow masses, and swirling katabatic winds, go so quiet in this one place? Some propose that it's merely a combination of extreme conditions: ultra-dry air, layered ice, damping vibrations, and the sheer absence of biological life. In other words, a perfect storm of silence. Nothing more. But there are those who think the silence might be hiding something. Some fringe theories link the zone of silence to a supposed global pattern of dead zones. Places like the Zona del Silencio in northern Mexico or parts of Siberia where electromagnetic interference and wildlife anomalies have been reported. Could Dome Fuji be Antarctica's counterpart in a... As we leave the quiet enigma of the zone of silence, the landscape remains unchanged, vast, glacial, and impossibly still. But now, we look not to what is missing, but to what has long refused to behave as expected. The early explorers of Antarctica, men like Ernest Shackleton and Robert Falcon Scott, were more than adventurers. They were meticulous navigators, hardened surveyors of a continent still wrapped in blank space on the maps of their day. To them, precision was survival. And in the white emptiness of the polar plateau, one instrument above all others held the power to guide or doom: the compass. And yet, there is a quiet thread woven through the surviving logs and journals of their journeys, a pattern of subtle, persistent disorientation. Compass bearings that seemed to drift, directional readings that did not match the known geography. Even during relatively clear weather, experienced navigators reported anomalies that could not be easily dismissed as human error or magnetic variation. These weren't dramatic spins or theatrical needle whirls, just small, creeping deviations, enough to shift a path by degrees, enough to go unnoticed, until it was too late. In 1903, Shackleton, aboard the Discovery alongside Scott, recorded several instances where compass headings diverged unexpectedly from solar observations. At the time, they blamed shifting magnetic declination, a known phenomenon, especially near the magnetic pole. But later review of their course corrections, made during the expedition's southern march, shows that the deviation was not consistent with expected models. Instead, it behaved like a moving distortion, a localized magnetic anomaly drifting subtly across the ice. What was it that disturbed their compasses in this manner? Modern scientists have examined the issue in the decades since. The Earth's magnetic field is indeed chaotic near the poles. Lines of force converge vertically, making standard horizontal compasses unreliable. This is well documented. But the areas in question, particularly around the trans-Antarctic mountains and parts of the Ross Ice Shelf, have shown unexpected magnetic signatures, detectable even today via satellite-based magnetometry. The British Antarctic Survey has mapped several regions where magnetotelluric surveys, which track the Earth's natural electric and magnetic fields, reveal underground anomalies. These might be due to ferrous rock concentrations or ancient impact structures buried under the ice, but none fully explain the transient nature of the compass disturbances described by Shackleton and Scott. Could something deeper be at work? In 1997, a Russian geophysical team working near the Queen Maud region reported brief magnetic drift unrelated to solar activity or instrument malfunction. The event lasted less than 40 minutes, but during that time, field instruments recorded a slow oscillation in the local magnetic vector, enough to skew true north by nearly 6 degrees. If such fluctuations occur periodically across Antarctica, it could explain why multiple expeditions over the last century, British, German, American, have quietly reported similar compass inconsistencies. They are often buried in technical appendices or footnotes, never emphasized, but never quite resolved. Then there is the matter of direction itself. Some physicists have proposed that lithospheric currents, electrical flows generated by pressure within the Earth's crust, may interact with regional magnetic fields in unpredictable ways. In Antarctica, where the crust is thin in places and under constant tectonic stress from massive ice weight, could such subterranean currents be enough to distort local magnetism, however briefly? Others have pointed to a more speculative possibility, that gravity anomalies in the region, specifically those mapped by satellite missions like NASA's GRACE project, may correspond with distortions in the local geomagnetic field. These anomalies, areas where the Earth's gravitational pull is slightly weaker or stronger than expected, may reflect unknown subsurface structures or mass distributions. And if so, are we dealing with something far older and deeper than we've yet imagined? Buried mountain ranges, impact craters, or, as some fringe theorists propose, ancient metallic objects, remnants of prehistoric or even non-human civilizations, long entombed beneath the ice. It's a theory that stretches beyond the bounds of conventional science. But the intrigue lies not in its certainty, but in its persistence. The human mind, when faced with gaps in data, seeks meaning. And Antarctica is full of such gaps. But even without turning to speculation, the mystery endures. Why did Shackleton and Scott, men who knew how to calibrate compasses, who accounted for declination and understood the nuances of navigation, continue to record these discrepancies? Could the compass drift they observed be linked to shifting magnetic zones beneath the ice, gradually migrating over time? Recent research has revealed that the South Magnetic Pole itself is not a fixed point. It moves, sometimes slowly, sometimes with surprising speed, due to changes in the Earth's molten outer core. From 1900 to today, it has traveled hundreds of kilometers. But this migration is steady, well documented, and doesn't account for momentary localized anomalies that vanish as quickly as they appear. So what, exactly, were Shackleton and Scott experiencing? Was it a trick of the mind? An artifact of equipment? Or was it something else entirely? A whisper of deeper forces beneath the continent, tugging subtly at our instruments and confounding our sense of direction? Perhaps the ice itself holds a memory, a frozen record of planetary forces that we do not yet fully comprehend. Perhaps the distortion is not magnetic at all, but a symptom of some broader, unknown interaction between the polar environment and the instruments we trust to interpret it. Even today, explorers and researchers working in Antarctica report occasional navigation glitches, especially near the same regions noted in those early expeditions. Technology has advanced, but the anomaly, it seems, has not gone away. And so we ask, in a place where even silence can distort reality and light dances without a cause, how can we be sure we're truly facing north? And in the white void where Shackleton once stood, compass in hand, wondering what had gone wrong, what was it that the Earth refused to reveal? From the drifting compass needles of the early British expeditions, our path now turns eastward, across the frozen heart of Antarctica, toward the remote, wind-scoured zones once patrolled by the other great power of the 20th century, the Soviet Union. Tucked deep within the continent's white abyss lies the forgotten legacy of Soviet Antarctica, a complex network of stations, outposts, and hidden caches scattered across the ice, many of which are now abandoned, buried, or inaccessible. The Soviets were among the most prolific explorers of the southern continent during the Cold War, and yet much of what they built, recorded, or stored beneath the surface has vanished from the historical record, lost artifacts of an empire and an era now gone. One such mystery begins at Vostok Station, established in 1957 during the International Geophysical Year. A place as inhospitable as any on Earth, Vostok sits atop more than 2 miles of ice, in temperatures that regularly fall below +80 degrees Celsius. Here, Soviet scientists conducted decades of classified research, meteorological studies, magnetic surveys, and deep ice core drilling. Officially, it was all for science. But Cold War tensions often blurred the line between research and reconnaissance. Satellite photos from American intelligence during the late 1970s showed unusual structures near Vostok, domed shelters, buried antennae, and what appeared to be large, unmarked cargo containers slowly being consumed by the ice. To this day, the contents of many of these containers remain unknown. What were they transporting, and why were some of these materials never recorded in public Soviet logs? In 1989, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, a trove of partially declassified Soviet documents made its way into Western hands. Among them were expedition logs detailing the loss of several storage modules during a blizzard at a site known only as Sector 27, a remote satellite camp 80 kilometers southeast of Vostok. The logs reference mechanical failure during retrieval, followed by a cryptic note. Materials irretrievable, storage now below threshold, future access uncertain. No coordinates were given. No follow-up missions were documented. Could Sector 27 be real? And if so, what exactly was lost beneath the snow? Some researchers speculate that it may have been an early test site for deep ice drilling technologies or experimental energy storage, perhaps even geothermal probes intended to tap into the subsurface heat anomalies later discovered beneath Marie Byrd land. Others suggest something more esoteric: recovered meteorite fragments, biological samples from subglacial lakes, or even Cold War surveillance equipment designed to monitor Western activity via polar orbiting satellites. Then there's the matter of the black box incident. In 1993, shortly after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, a joint Russian-French scientific team operating near Mirny Station reportedly stumbled upon a sealed metallic container, roughly the size of a footlocker, emerging from a crevasse uncovered by shifting ice. It bore no markings except a faded red star and the year 1962. Inside, according to unconfirmed reports leaked to a European scientific journal, were degraded magnetic tape reels, sealed vials, and a heavily corroded instrument panel. French sources claim the container was quickly removed from the site by Russian military personnel and flown out under diplomatic clearance. To this day, no official statement has confirmed or denied the find. What was inside that container? A routine atmospheric monitor? A chemical experiment lost in the snow? Or was it something more enigmatic? Perhaps an artifact of an early Soviet attempt to communicate through or study the polar ionosphere, a region still poorly understood today? Complicating the mystery is the sheer difficulty of revisiting these lost sites. Much of Soviet-era Antarctica was charted by hand and preserved in paper records, many of which were lost during the political upheaval of the 1990s. Bases were abandoned with little notice. Equipment was left behind. In some cases, entire structures were swallowed by the snow within weeks, as the ice sheet shifted and covered them over. There are rumors among contemporary Russian researchers that not all materials left behind were accounted for. Some believe there are still sealed repositories beneath the ice containing experimental gear, classified records, and even early biological samples from beneath Lake Vostok, long before Western teams began drilling there in the early 2000s. One theory suggests that Soviet scientists, aware of microbial life existing in extreme environments, may have secretly sampled subglacial organisms decades earlier and quietly stored the results. The motive? Strategic advantage. The possibility of developing extreme environment biotechnologies, or even novel pharmaceuticals, may have been too tempting to resist. And yet, these possibilities remain purely speculative. No concrete evidence has surfaced. No official retrieval missions have been launched. The only trails that remain are fractured documents, second-hand reports, and ice-covered satellite images showing the faint outlines of man-made structures beneath the snow. Still, questions persist. What was really lost during those final Soviet years in Antarctica? How many containers, sealed crates, or buried labs now lie beneath the shifting ice, their secrets entombed in silence? Could the disappearance of these artifacts be nothing more than the natural entropy of remote exploration? Or is there something more deliberate at play? A choice to leave certain discoveries behind, untouched, unspoken? In a continent that guards its mysteries so jealously, the story of the Soviet legacy is not one of clear answers, but of haunting absences, of places once mapped, but now erased, of knowledge once held, but now forgotten. And as modern Russia reasserts its presence in Antarctica, the past may yet re-emerge. What will we find, if we ever find it at all? And more importantly, why was it buried in the first place? As we move from the lost traces of Soviet installations, still hidden beneath layers of wind-packed snow and secrecy, we come to a quieter, but no less unsettling mystery. One that requires no hidden technology or missing archives. One that unfolds in plain sight. In the frozen stillness surrounding today's modern research outposts. The coastlines of Antarctica, especially along the Ross Sea and the Antarctic Peninsula, are teeming with life. Life that has evolved to thrive at the very edge of survivability. Here, colonies of Adelie and emperor penguins gather by the tens of thousands. Leopard seals glide beneath ice floes, and above the wind-swept ridgelines, petrels wheel in silence. It is in this frozen theater of resilience that an unsettling pattern has quietly emerged. Scattered across the last few decades and largely confined to areas near research facilities, there have been isolated mass die-offs of local wildlife, events that, even today, remain poorly understood. One of the earliest documented cases occurred in 1988, near the French-operated Dumont-d'Urville station. Over the course of just 2 weeks, researchers noticed an abrupt decline in a nearby Adelie penguin colony. Birds that had appeared healthy only days prior were found dead in clusters. No signs of trauma, no obvious predation. The initial explanation was viral, but blood samples, sent for analysis, returned inconclusive. No definitive pathogen was ever identified. Then, in 1994, an eerily similar event occurred again. This time near McMurdo Station, the largest U.S. base in Antarctica. A group of marine biologists monitoring seal populations on the sea ice adjacent to the Erebus Glacier tongue found a group of crab-eater seals that had died suddenly and simultaneously. There were no signs of violence. Autopsies noted pulmonary edema, fluid in the lungs, but offered no clear cause. And still more recently, in 2011, at a site near the Chinese Kunlun Station, high in the interior near Dome A, aerial drone surveys spotted what appeared to be several dozen snow petrels, an elusive bird known to nest in this remote region, lying motionless near the outskirts of the ice shelf. The temperatures had not shifted dramatically. The wind was not unusually strong. Once again, no obvious explanation followed. What could cause these sudden, small-scale die-offs? Natural explanations exist. Antarctic wildlife lives on the razor's edge. Even minor shifts in temperature, sudden exposure to wind chill, or subtle disease outbreaks could account for these deaths. Some biologists argue that isolated microbial blooms, triggered by melting freshwater or exposed sediment, could briefly release toxins into local environments, undetectable by standard equipment. But not everyone is convinced. What has drawn attention to these events is not just their suddenness, but their proximity to human activity. In nearly every reported case, these mass deaths have occurred within a 15-30-kilometer radius of established research bases. Could there be a connection? Is it coincidence or something else? Some scientists have raised the possibility of low-frequency noise or infrasound, unintended byproducts of power generators, scientific instruments, or radar installations, disrupting the internal navigation or equilibrium of sensitive species. Marine mammals, in particular, rely on highly attuned biological sonar. Could an experimental system, perhaps even unknowingly active, interfere with that ability? Another hypothesis points to chemical off-gassing. In the extreme cold of Antarctica, even trace amounts of leaked industrial chemicals, coolants, fuel vapors, or cleaning agents can persist in the environment longer than expected. If carried by katabatic winds across a nesting zone or haul-out area, could exposure to these substances have fatal consequences for already fragile animals? Then there is the theory, more speculative but persistent, that subsurface geothermal vents, or even unknown emissions from beneath the ice, may occasionally release sudden bursts of gas or heat, undetectable at the surface but deadly to wildlife in the path of these eruptions. We know that Antarctica sits atop a complex web of fault lines and buried volcanoes. Could a sudden release of CO2 or methane explain the patterns we see? Still others point to the increasingly controversial idea that classified experiments, perhaps involving energy transmission, magnetic field manipulation, or environmental monitoring, may unintentionally affect surrounding ecosystems, not as a deliberate act, but as a side effect not yet fully understood or not fully disclosed. And in the absence of clear answers, rumors grow. Whispers among research teams of sudden radio silences, unexplained equipment failures, or unmarked overflights have only fueled speculation. What is being tested out here, so far from oversight? Could new technologies operating in isolated regions be responsible for wildlife disruptions? To be clear, there is no conclusive evidence linking human research to these die-offs, and most Antarctic scientists are careful, meticulous, and deeply respectful of the environment they inhabit. But the pattern remains, and in a place where even whispers carry weight, the mystery continues to echo. Why here? Why near us? And why, in each case, does the event pass as quickly as it arrives, leaving no trace, no warning, and no clear cause? As Antarctica continues to warm, faster than nearly any region on Earth, its ecosystems are under increasing stress. It's possible that these die-offs are early signs of larger ecological imbalances, or perhaps harbingers of unknown thresholds being crossed. But then again, if these were simply natural occurrences, why do they appear with such unnerving regularity near the very places we choose to call home? In this vast, unyielding wilderness, are we the anomaly? Or are we merely witnesses to processes, biological, geological, perhaps even geophysical, that remain beyond our understanding? As the ice continues to shift and our instruments hum quietly into the cold, we are left with yet another question. What else is happening here, just beyond the range of our sensors? From the fragile lives lost near today's stations, we now turn our gaze backward, to a time when survival in Antarctica depended not on technology, but on grit, wool, and wood. And in that era, another mystery lingers, not of people, but of objects that should still be here, but are not. Antarctica is often described as a time capsule. Its relentless cold preserves what other continents would erase. Paper doesn't rot here. Leather doesn't mildew. Even food left behind by the first explorers is sometimes found perfectly intact, its contents frozen in place for over a century. And yet, strangely, some of the gear left by early 20th century expeditions, documented, photographed, mapped, has disappeared entirely. Where did it go? High on the Ross ice shelf, not far from where Scott's ill-fated Terra Nova expedition ended in tragedy, lies a modest wooden hut. Its edges are worn soft by time, its interior dim and silent. This is one of the best preserved structures from the heroic age of Antarctic exploration. Inside, you can still see crates stamped with the names of long-dead explorers, sealed tins of biscuits, and handwritten notes curled at the edges by the dry, frigid air. But some objects, known to have been brought here, are missing. In 1911, Captain Robert Falcon Scott's team meticulously documented their gear: sledges, fuel tins, field instruments, meteorological equipment, and even early photographic plates. Yet when researchers returned in the 1950s and 60s to survey and catalog these same sites, discrepancies emerged. Several items, clearly visible in original photos, were no longer present. An early tripod-mounted theodolite used for mapping the Beardmore Glacier, a specially modified kerosene stove, a box of navigational logs. Gone. It's tempting to explain such losses with the obvious: time, ice, and entropy. Objects shift during storms. Snowdrifts cover and uncover things in unpredictable ways. And yet, some of these missing items were stored indoors, where wind and exposure weren't a factor. Could scavenging be the answer? Possibly. In the early days of Antarctic tourism, before regulations were tightened, a few visitors are known to have taken souvenirs: a rusted can, a torn glove, a compass with a story. But even these don't account for bulkier objects, nor for the fact that no black market trade in such artifacts has ever surfaced. These items, if taken, have disappeared into complete obscurity. The case of the Nordenskiöld expedition in 1902 offers an even stranger puzzle. This Swedish team, led by Otto Nordenskiöld, established winter quarters on Snow Hill Island off the northeastern tip of the Antarctic peninsula. Their camp was well documented, and after being rescued in 1903, they left behind several caches: wooden supply boxes, skis, and spare tools. Yet in 2005, when a modern archaeological team attempted to locate these same supply caches using historical maps, only fragments were found: scattered nails, a splinter of wood, a single broken sled runner half buried in silt. No crates, no skis, no metal tools. Had the sea reclaimed them? Perhaps. But Snow Hill Island had remained mostly ice-covered and geologically stable. No obvious floods, landslides, or meltwater flows had been recorded. And curiously, metal objects, which should have resisted erosion best, were almost entirely absent. Could they have been deliberately removed? Some historians have floated the idea that subsequent expeditions may have cannibalized earlier supply dumps, reusing the materials in the days before resupply by aircraft became routine. But official logs from later missions make no mention of scavenging the Snow Hill cache. And in any case, wouldn't at least some of the metal items have been left behind? Then there are the rumors, quietly passed among field researchers and archivists, of incomplete artifact recoveries or discrepancies between early inventories and recovered contents. Some even suggest that valuable instruments, especially those with sensitive magnetic or meteorological applications, may have been removed during the Cold War for reverse engineering or analysis. An unlikely theory, perhaps, but not entirely impossible. The magnetometers and altimeters of 1910 were remarkably well crafted, and some employed alloys now difficult to reproduce. More speculative voices have suggested something even stranger. Could the disappearance of certain items be linked to the unexplained anomalies in magnetic field data recorded across Antarctica throughout the 20th century? Could early equipment have been pulled deeper into crevasses by microseismic activity, into regions now buried and inaccessible? Or were they simply relocated by forces we do not yet understand? Some fringe theorists point to the polar plateau's unique geophysical properties, places like Dome C and Dome Fuji, where gravitational readings and background radiation fluctuate in ways still not fully explained. In such zones, they claim, even time and orientation behave unpredictably. Could these areas produce environmental conditions that distort magnetic storage media or affect the preservation or loss of certain materials? There's no hard evidence for this, and yet the mystery remains. because in a place where temperatures preserve century-old footprints in the snow, it seems all the more bizarre that we cannot find a simple wooden crate, or the metal stove known to have warmed exhausted men as they mapped a continent. Why do some items remain untouched, preserved like relics in a polar museum, while others, equally durable, equally recorded, vanish without a trace? Is it simply the randomness of the ice? Or is there a pattern we have not yet seen, one buried not only in snow but in the shifting archives of memory, wind, and time? Perhaps the next team to revisit those forgotten sites, armed with ground-penetrating radar and a different set of questions, will find more than just old nails and splinters. Perhaps they'll find what was meant to remain hidden, or perhaps they'll find nothing at all. From the vanished artifacts of long-forgotten expeditions, we now shift our focus to something more visceral, less tangible, but far more immediate. While some Antarctic mysteries lie buried in the past, others erupt, suddenly, violently, from deep beneath the ice. At the bottom of the Earth, 90 degrees south, lies Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station. It is a place defined by extremes. Temperatures can drop below -100 degrees Fahrenheit. The sun rises once a year and sets once. Days and nights are measured in months, not hours. Above, the sky rotates in a slow spiral. Below, the ice is 2 miles thick, resting atop a bedrock largely hidden from human eyes. And in recent years, something strange has been happening in that deep, ancient ice. Across several Antarctic winters, seismometers stationed near the South Pole have recorded unexplained icequakes, sharp, sudden pulses not caused by surface movement, glaciers shifting, or familiar tectonic activity. Unlike traditional earthquakes, these icequakes originate from within the ice sheet itself, sometimes at shallow depths, sometimes far below, and often without any apparent trigger. The term icequake isn't new. It refers to the cracking and fracturing of ice masses under pressure. In coastal regions, these are common and well understood, triggered by temperature changes, tides, or the sudden calving of glaciers. But the events near the South Pole don't fit that pattern. There are no nearby cliffs or ice shelves. The temperature remains nearly constant. And yet, the quakes persist. The first unusual cluster was detected in 2001, deep in the polar night, when researchers noticed a rhythmic series of tremors, spaced hours apart over several days. At first, these were dismissed as minor glacial adjustments, but subsequent analysis revealed a curious detail. The waveform patterns resembled neither ice shelf cracking nor tectonic motion. They were sharp, contained, and oddly harmonic, like the ringing of a struck bell, brief but resonant. Were these deep crevasses collapsing? Underground water flows? Some researchers thought so, until newer data complicated the picture. In 2014, a U.S. geophysics team deployed a denser array of sensors near the South Pole to map subterranean ice dynamics. What they recorded raised eyebrows. Over 30 distinct quakes in a 72-hour period, none linked to wind shifts, temperature swings, or surface strain. Their epicenters appeared to move horizontally at speeds too fast for natural glacial movement. Even more unsettling, the events always occurred at night, between 2 and 4 a.m., local station time. Why then? What forces, if any, operate in the middle of the night beneath 2 miles of compressed ice? Mainstream scientists have offered plausible theories. One suggests that subglacial lakes, such as Lake Vostok or Lake Mercer, could experience sudden pressure shifts, leading to rapid upward pulses that fracture overlying ice. Another proposes that thermal expansion from deep geothermal heat pockets might occasionally rupture the basal layer of the ice sheet. Yet neither fully explains the strange timing or the repeating frequency patterns seen in some waveforms. It is this rhythmic behavior that continues to puzzle analysts. A few geophysicists have begun to wonder whether man-made activity could be influencing the ice. Could nearby station infrastructure, fuel generators, antenna towers, or atmospheric testing arrays be triggering microfractures? Could sonic interference, even at subaudible levels, reverberate through the ice in ways we don't yet understand? But the anomalies don't stop there. In several instances, low-frequency hums, undetectable to human ears but clearly visible on spectrograms, have accompanied these icequakes. Similar to the mysterious Ross ice shelf hum recorded elsewhere on the continent, these tones sometimes precede the seismic events by several seconds, as if something were initiating a reaction deep underground. Are these just echoes? Resonance? Or signals of something more? As expected, fringe theories have emerged. Some have speculated that the South Pole region might be home to hidden caverns, massive voids beneath the ice, warmed by geothermal energy or volcanic vents. Such spaces, if they exist, could collapse or shift, generating the kinds of seismic signatures being detected. Others suggest that deep magnetic anomalies, known to exist near the pole, could be interfering with both instrumentation and structural ice integrity. One theory posits that the Earth's shifting magnetic field lines, which converge near the pole, might generate periodic energy releases, either electromagnetic or acoustic, that travel downward and fracture the ancient ice from within. And then, of course, there are whispers of more exotic possibilities. Could these recurring events be the result of undisclosed drilling, high-energy physics experiments, or advanced subsurface mapping projects? The South Pole has long hosted scientific installations related to neutrino detection and cosmic radiation. Might these systems, deliberately or not, be impacting the environment beneath them? Or is something even deeper at play? Is it possible that beneath the Great Polar Plateau, where bedrock meets ice in frozen silence, there is something we have yet to discover? A reservoir of heat, a buried structure, a source of resonance we don't yet comprehend? The answers remain elusive. For now, the seismometers continue to record. The tremors continue, subtle, soft, but undeniable. They occur in the quiet hours, when the wind has died and the sky is black, and the ice, for a moment, moves without warning. And still the questions persist. Why are these events confined to the area near South Pole Station? Why do they follow no predictable geological rhythm? And what, if anything, do they signal beneath the surface? In Antarctica, where every sound is amplified by silence and every vibration travels through cold, unyielding layers of time, even the smallest tremor feels like a whisper from the deep. But what is it trying to say? As the last echoes from the unexplained icequakes fade into silence, the lens now turns to something smaller, quieter, but no less perplexing. Not a tremor in the ground, but a whisper in the ice. Beneath the endless white plains of East Antarctica, where the snow compacts over millennia into deep glacial ice, lie some of Earth's oldest and most pristine climate records, bubbles. Tiny pockets of ancient atmosphere, frozen in time, sealed under pressure within ice cores drilled from depths more than 2 miles below the surface. Each bubble is a time capsule, holding within it the gases of a world long gone. Scientists extract these cores and study the atmospheric content layer by layer, reading the rhythms of the past like pages in a book, charting volcanic eruptions, industrial age pollution, even shifts in global temperature stretching back over 800,000 years. But some of these bubbles don't tell the story we expected. In recent decades, as ice cores have been taken from various Antarctic drilling sites, Vostok, Dome C, Dome Fuji, researchers have noted a peculiar anomaly. Within certain layers, the levels of trapped carbon dioxide, CO2, appear to be unexpectedly high. Not just slightly above the norm, but in some cases several times greater than what would be expected based on global climate reconstructions. At first, the assumption was error: contamination from equipment, faulty calibration, or local interference from volcanic ash layers. But repeated sampling across multiple expeditions and using different methodologies confirmed the same result: localized spikes in CO2 concentrations, often in bubbles only microns wide, and often at seemingly random intervals. What could explain this? One mainstream hypothesis is that microbial life trapped within the ice may have remained semi-active over tens or even hundreds of thousands of years, producing carbon dioxide in tiny quantities that became concentrated within sealed microenvironments. This theory gained traction after living microbes were recovered from deep ice cores at Lake Vostok and Whillans ice stream. But here's where it gets strange. In many of the anomalous samples, no organic material was detected. No microbes, no biomass, just the bubble and its unnaturally elevated gas content. Moreover, the ratios of carbon isotopes inside these high CO2 bubbles sometimes deviate from both biological and volcanic signatures. Carbon-12 and carbon-13 occur in a balance that doesn't align neatly with either source. It's almost as if the gas doesn't belong to any known system. Could there be unknown geologic processes beneath Antarctica, capable of injecting gases into the ice through cracks or sublimation events? Perhaps. But these events would likely leave chemical signatures, traces of methane, sulfur, or heavy metals. In many cases, those are absent. Another possibility: undiscovered subglacial vents or geothermal hotspots, similar to the one detected beneath Marie Byrd Land. These might release gases through fissures that become trapped as the surrounding ice refreezes. Yet again, the pattern is inconsistent. The CO2 bubbles do not always correspond to regions of known geothermal activity. Then come the more fringe theories: speculative, unconfirmed, and controversial. Some theorists suggest that these bubbles might be remnants of a lost atmospheric event, a sudden carbon pulse from a past unknown civilization or extraterrestrial source. Others claim that their irregular distribution could be evidence of intelligent intervention, perhaps experimentation or ancient terraforming efforts locked beneath the polar ice. More grounded researchers counter that such ideas are untestable, bordering on pseudoscience. And yet the bubbles remain. Even the most conservative explanation, microbial gas production, does not fully account for the scale of the CO2 spikes, nor for their occurrence in otherwise sterile layers of ice. What kind of organism could survive in those conditions? How could it metabolize with no energy, no nutrients, and no waste products detectable? In a 2019 paper, researchers from the Alfred Wegener Institute proposed a theory involving non-biological CO2 formation via pressure-induced chemical reactions between trace mineral deposits and trapped air. Under extreme pressure and at sub-zero temperatures, some compounds may behave unpredictably. But even this model, while promising, has yet to be reproduced in laboratory conditions. And so the questions persist. Why do some ice bubbles hold far more carbon dioxide than they should? Why do these anomalies appear in multiple regions, yet follow no clear chronological or geographic pattern? And what does it mean, if anything, for our understanding of Earth's past climate and its future? If the records we rely on to model ancient atmospheres contain unexplained distortions, even if only in small doses, then what else might we have misunderstood? In Antarctica, the answers often lie not in the dramatic, but in the invisible. Not in the crash of shifting glaciers or the glow of auroras, but in the quiet suspension of air within a bubble smaller than a grain of sand, an artifact of a time long before ours. And yet, perhaps that bubble holds something more than just gas. Perhaps it holds a riddle we haven't yet translated. A signal from a moment in Earth's history that refuses to align with our timelines. We drill, we measure, we catalog, and still, the ice keeps its secrets. Could there be other layers still deeper, holding stranger concentrations? Could we be glimpsing fragments of an atmospheric disruption we have yet to understand? Or are we, in trying to interpret every anomaly, merely revealing the limits of what we believe we know? The bubbles are silent. The pressure keeps them frozen in time. But if they could speak, what would they say? If air bubbles in ancient ice can preserve the memory of vanished atmospheres, then modern instruments should help us understand the skies above Antarctica today. But what happens when those very instruments, delicate, precise, and built for resilience, simply vanish? Our journey now lifts off the frozen surface, following a curious trail not buried in the ice, but lost in the air itself. Near McMurdo Station, the sky is a vast, cold canvas, layered in violet hues during polar dusk and pricked by unfamiliar constellations during the long winter night. It's here, amid this haunting emptiness, that scientists routinely release high-altitude weather balloons into the upper atmosphere. Equipped with radio sondes, lightweight instruments designed to measure temperature, humidity, pressure, and wind velocity, these balloons are essential tools for tracking global climate patterns and polar vortex behavior. Every few hours, a new balloon is filled with helium and released. As it rises, it transmits real-time data back to Earth, sometimes soaring to heights of 30 kilometers or more before bursting and falling back as a tiny parachute-equipped capsule. Most of the time, this process is uneventful. But sometimes, they don't come back. And sometimes, they disappear in ways that raise unsettling questions. Over the past 2 decades, numerous weather balloons launched from Antarctic research stations have vanished without explanation. Not burst, not destroyed by storms, not lost to equipment failure. Instead, their signals simply cut out mid-ascent, often at strange altitudes, and with no prior indication of malfunction. In some cases, balloons have ceased transmitting far below the expected burst height. Others have stopped sending data while ascending steadily through calm conditions. And while occasional technical failures are expected, the number and pattern of these vanishings, particularly in certain sectors of the continent, has prompted quiet concern among atmospheric scientists. McMurdo isn't the only site affected. Concordia Station, Vostok, and even the U.S. South Pole Station have reported similar losses. Sometimes it's a single balloon. Sometimes it's several in a row. Often, these disappearances cluster during geomagnetically quiet periods, when solar activity is low and interference should be minimal. Why, then, do the balloons vanish? One mainstream hypothesis points to unexpected shear winds or microbursts, narrow vertical columns of descending air that can suddenly knock out or damage a balloon before it reaches its designed altitude. However, these microbursts would likely cause erratic motion in the transmitted data before the cutout, and in many cases, such precursors are simply absent. Another suggestion is extreme icing, especially during ascent through supercooled clouds. Ice could form on the radio sonde, disrupt transmission, or cause premature failure. But again, this doesn't explain the abrupt and total signal loss, particularly when the onboard batteries should still have hours of charge. Then there's the electromagnetic hypothesis. Some researchers have observed that the vanishings tend to occur over areas of Antarctica where magnetic anomalies have been detected, regions where Earth's magnetic field behaves unpredictably, distorting radio waves or interfering with electronic instruments. These zones, such as those near Dome Fuji and Wilkes Land, are already subjects of curiosity due to other unexplained phenomena: low-frequency hums, radar distortions, and gravitational anomalies. Could these same anomalies be swallowing the signals from weather balloons? Or could they be something else entirely? The fringe theories begin here, quietly, cautiously. Some suggest that unknown energy fields, perhaps linked to the shifting of the magnetic poles or deep Earth geological processes, might interfere with transmission. Others raise the possibility of undisclosed defense or research technologies, either from legacy Cold War operations or modern experimental arrays that might jam or absorb radio frequencies without trace. And then there are the more speculative whispers. Could there be structures, natural or artificial, beneath the Antarctic surface that emit stealth electromagnetic signatures, bending or absorbing signals from above? Could weather balloons be drifting into zones of spatial distortion, where signals behave differently, or are lost altogether? Or might they be encountering unknown atmospheric phenomena, unlike anything recorded elsewhere on Earth? Whatever the cause, researchers have noted that these disappearances often go unpublicized, logged quietly in field reports, but seldom explored in depth. Perhaps it's because the loss of a balloon is technically routine. They are low cost, disposable, and expected to fail eventually, but it's the pattern that disturbs, the recurrence in the same regions under calm skies. To date, there has been no centralized investigation into the phenomenon, no large-scale analysis of vanished balloons across all Antarctic stations. The data exists, scattered across mission logs and telemetry archives. But piecing it together would require time, coordination, and, perhaps, a willingness to entertain questions no one is ready to ask. What could be interfering with such simple instruments in one of the most remote and empty places on Earth? Why do some disappear without trace, while others, launched in the same conditions, complete their ascent and return usable data? And why do these oddities continue to occur in places already tied to other polar enigmas, magnetic glitches, low-frequency seismic tones, and unexplained heat sources beneath the ice? For now, the balloons rise in silence. Their thin silver skins catch the low sun, vanishing into a colorless sky. Some return, some burst as expected, and some simply vanish. No signal, no data, no descent, just a sudden silence, mid-air. Perhaps in a continent so defined by what it hides, this too is just another quiet warning, an unsolved thread floating higher than we can reach. What exactly is it that drifts above the Antarctic sky, and why does it sometimes refuse to let go? The balloons disappear into the pale, endless sky, and sometimes never return. But what happens when the silence descends not from above, but from within? At the very bottom of the world, where all lines of longitude converge into a single frozen point, sits one of the most isolated scientific outposts ever built, Amundsen-Scott South Pole Station. Surrounded by thousands of miles of ice and exposed to months of total darkness during the polar night, the station operates like a sealed vessel on an alien planet. Here, survival depends entirely on machines, power generators, life support systems, and an unbroken stream of data connecting this remote frontier to the outside world. But sometimes, the power fails. Not in the ordinary way. Not due to a blown fuse or a generator overload, but in a way that has puzzled even seasoned engineers and long-serving staff. Sudden, unexplained blackouts. These are not moments of brief flickering or minor disruptions. They are abrupt, complete losses of internal power systems, lights extinguished, monitors gone dark, sensors offline, all without clear cause. In the heart of the station, where temperatures can plummet below 70 degrees Celsius, even a momentary blackout is no small thing. And yet, it has happened, multiple times. The earliest documented case occurred in 1998 during the height of the austral winter. The sun had long since disappeared below the horizon, and the station was operating on its winter skeleton crew. At approximately 02:47 local time, all internal systems went dark. Emergency lighting engaged as designed. But what disturbed engineers was that none of the backup systems had failed. Power should not have dropped. It returned 12 minutes later, just as suddenly. No component overload, no signal interference, no weather anomaly, no explanation. In the years since, similar events have been recorded sporadically: 1999, 2003, 2010, and again as recently as 2018. The details differ slightly. Durations range from under a minute to nearly half an hour. Sometimes only certain wings of the station are affected. Other times, the entire complex is engulfed in darkness. But the pattern is consistent. No physical fault is ever found. No procedural error. Just blackness. Mainstream theories focus on the station's extreme environment. Could ice crystals, razor-sharp, electrostatically charged, interfere with sensitive electrical systems? Could geomagnetic activity, especially near the south magnetic pole, temporarily disrupt the flow of current or induce surges that momentarily disable internal circuits? The station's proximity to powerful ionospheric research arrays, such as those tied to atmospheric heating experiments, has also raised eyebrows. Could stray emissions or resonance effects be impacting power systems within the station's shielded core? Some experts argue these are rare but explainable technical failures, symptoms of aging infrastructure or subtle design limitations under Antarctica's unique stresses. But the station's maintenance logs tell a stranger story. During at least 2 of the blackout events, key monitoring equipment, used for neutrino detection and magnetic field fluctuations, recorded brief bursts of anomalous energy. The data are incomplete. The bursts lasted less than a second and didn't match any known atmospheric or seismic profile. Were they linked to the blackout, or mere coincidence? Here, the theories grow stranger. Some researchers whisper of natural electromagnetic anomalies beneath the ice, hidden mineral formations or deep crustal structures emitting powerful but intermittent pulses. These ideas borrow from the concept of telluric currents, naturally occurring electric currents that flow through Earth's crust and have been known to influence both man-made systems and animal behavior. Could such a current surge, undetectable until it manifests, be momentarily overwhelming even the hardened systems of Amundsen-Scott? Others propose more radical possibilities. Fringe theorists point to the station's unique location, directly at the Earth's axis of rotation, as a site of gravitational or magnetic instability. Could there be shifting anomalies in the geodynamo, the fluid outer core responsible for generating Earth's magnetic field, that express themselves here in ways we don't yet understand? And then there's a quieter set of theories, the ones not published, the ones passed among station veterans over mugs of instant coffee in the long dark months of winter. That something might be beneath the ice, something not geological, something interfering. Supporters of this view note that some blackout events have coincided with unexplained sensor anomalies from deep ice detectors, equipment like IceCube, the vast neutrino observatory buried kilometers below the surface. These sensors are designed to listen for the faintest flickers of cosmic particles. But once in a while, they catch something else. Signals that don't match any known cosmic signature. Flickers, pulses, sometimes accompanied by the same kind of electromagnetic noise recorded during blackouts. Are these mere technical quirks? Echoes of distant solar storms? Or something far stranger? Could an unknown source, man-made or otherwise, be causing localized pulses of energy beneath the pole? And if so, for what purpose? The staff of Amundsen-Scott continue their work with dedication and professionalism. The blackouts, while disconcerting, are rare, but the unease remains. Because when everything is powered by machines, and those machines fail without warning, questions begin to surface. Is the cold interfering with our instruments? Is Earth's magnetism more volatile than we believe? Or is Antarctica so silent, so vast, hiding more than just ancient ice? One thing is certain. In the most remote human outpost on Earth, where the only constant is darkness, when the lights go out unexpectedly, the silence feels different, almost watching. What lies beneath the pole, or above it, that flickers the power of our most secure outpost? And how many more blackouts will pass before we understand? The lights flicker out in the heart of the South Pole, and silence envelops the station once again. But several hundred miles away on the desolate expanse of the Antarctic plateau, a different silence reigns. Deeper, older. And here, at Concordia Station, another set of questions emerges. Not about power failures, but about machines that should fly and don't. Concordia Station, perched on the barren ice of Dome C, sits at an altitude of over 3,000 meters. It is one of the most isolated research bases in the world, a joint French-Italian installation where winter temperatures plunge below 80 degrees, and the air is so thin it mimics conditions found on Mars. It is a place built for science at the edge of human endurance. And yet, it is not the researchers themselves that have drawn attention in recent years, but what keeps happening above them. Drones, unmanned aerial vehicles once hailed as the future of Antarctic fieldwork, have increasingly become unreliable over the skies of Concordia. Not because of wind, not because of cold, but because of something less easily explained. The issue isn't mere signal loss or battery failure, though both can occur in extreme environments. The problem, as reported in multiple field logs and informal accounts from 2016 onward, is that drones, sophisticated, hardened, GPS-synced systems, simply stop responding. Sometimes mid-flight, sometimes before takeoff, sometimes while hovering directly over certain sectors of the ice field. They drop suddenly, spiral inexplicably, freeze mid-air, or begin drifting toward restricted zones without command input. And each time, there are no fault diagnostics, no apparent interference, just a malfunction that seems to defy the very systems meant to prevent it. Researchers at Concordia initially chalked the incidents up to harsh conditions. Extreme cold is notorious for degrading battery life. Electromagnetic interference is not unknown in high-latitude environments, but further investigation made the situation murkier. The failures were not random. Across multiple years and drone models, from commercial quadcopters to military-grade survey UAVs, patterns began to emerge. The failures were most likely to occur when the drones passed over a particular region northeast of the station, near what geologists have labeled as Subglacial Basin 57. It is a flat, nondescript stretch of snow and ice. From the surface, nothing about it stands out. But satellite data tells a different story. In 2009, ice-penetrating radar surveys conducted as part of ESA's Cryosat program revealed anomalies in this very sector. Strange undulations beneath the ice, as if the underlying bedrock was shaped by something other than glacial erosion. And more curiously, localized magnetic deviation. Though modest in strength, the distortion was precise and persistent. Compasses don't behave normally over this zone. Neither, it seems, do aircraft. Could this be the culprit? A mainstream explanation offered by European geophysicists suggests a metal-rich deposit, perhaps a large iron-nickel body or a magnetic igneous intrusion deep within the crust. Such formations could subtly distort the local magnetic field and confuse navigation systems. Yet this doesn't account for one critical detail. Many of the affected drones do not rely on magnetic orientation at all. They navigate via satellite GPS, inertial tracking, and onboard gyroscopes. And these systems, protected against exactly this sort of interference, still fail. Is it possible there's an unknown form of interference, perhaps pulsed, perhaps transient, rising from below the ice? Some have suggested that the extreme environment at Dome C, where dry air and high altitude enhance radio signal propagation, could amplify natural resonances from the ice or rock. Others point to the possibility of undiscovered geothermal vents, known to exist elsewhere in Antarctica, emitting low-frequency pulses that could temporarily disrupt electronics. But then, the theories begin to diverge. Some researchers have speculated, quietly, about military activity. After all, Antarctica is governed by the Antarctic Treaty System, which forbids military operations or weapons testing. But enforcement is complex, especially in remote, rarely visited zones. Could there be clandestine experiments or signal-based tests causing interference? Others have gone further, hypothesizing the existence of artificial structures buried under the ice, relics of ancient civilizations, long-lost meteorite impacts, or even remnants from humanity's Cold War past. The drone malfunctions, they argue, may be unintentional byproducts of some hidden technology or field generator, long dormant or still quietly active. These ideas, while unsupported by hard evidence, are nonetheless fueled by one simple truth. No one knows what's beneath Subglacial Basin 57. Drilling is limited, access is difficult, and even with satellite imaging and radar scanning, the ice conceals much more than it reveals. In 2021, a collaborative drone project involving 3 different research teams from Italy, France, and Germany attempted to systematically map the anomalous zone with overlapping UAV flights. All 3 missions failed within a 24-hour window. Each drone suffered a unique failure. One lost its gyroscope mid-air. One shut off completely 90 seconds after liftoff. The third, perhaps most disturbingly, returned to the launch zone, but with its internal data completely wiped. No logs, no images, just a blank drive. Was this a coincidence? A cascade of unrelated malfunctions in one of Earth's harshest environments? Or was something else at work, something we don't yet understand? At Concordia Station, the experiments continue. But there's a growing sense among field engineers and technicians that something elusive hangs over this corner of Antarctica. Something that resists observation. Something that won't be mapped easily. What force causes machines to fail in the same patch of sky? Why there, and nowhere else? Is it geology? Magnetism? Climate? Or are we witnessing the limits of our technology, and perhaps, inadvertently, brushing against the edge of something not yet known? The ice is quiet. The sky above Concordia is empty once more, but the question remains, why won't they fly? And while Concordia's silent skies leave us puzzled, far to the west, beyond the vast expanse of the Central Plateau, another enigma unfolds, not in the air, but in the slow, deliberate movement of ice itself. Welcome to George VI Sound. Stretching like a frozen corridor between Alexander Island and the Antarctic Peninsula, George VI Sound is not just a place of imposing beauty, it's a place where nature seems to break its own rules. Here, between sheer ice cliffs and towering mountains, the sea is concealed beneath a roof of glacial ice. Yet beneath this calm, gleaming surface, something strange is happening. From satellite imagery and ice-penetrating radar, researchers have long observed that the flow of ice in this channel doesn't behave the way it should. While most glacial movements in Antarctica follow expected paths, downhill, seaward, predictable, the ice in George VI Sound twists and turns in unnatural ways. It accelerates, slows, and occasionally reverses direction entirely, as if responding to invisible forces. Why? At first glance, the explanations seem obvious. The sound is, after all, influenced by complex tides beneath the ice. It sits atop a rift system, fractured geological bedrock that might shift over time. Subglacial lakes and hidden geothermal sources could be at play. But the more data that has been collected, the more curious the patterns have become. In some sections, the ice appears to move sideways against the topographical gradient. In others, it pulses, its velocity changing dramatically, almost rhythmically, without any clear external cause. These aren't minor fluctuations. Some have described them as glacial convulsions, temporary bursts of energy in a system that should, by all accounts, be stable and slow. Geophysical models have struggled to replicate this behavior. Simulations using known ice dynamics and local topography don't fully explain the lateral movements or sudden speed shifts. This raises questions. Could it be the result of sub-ice ocean currents? Warmer waters from the Bellingshausen Sea surging beneath and lubricating the underside of the ice shelf? Or is there something deeper, something more structural beneath the channel itself? In 2018, a team from the British Antarctic Survey published a paper pointing to a potential culprit: subglacial ridges, ancient buried mountain ranges that run perpendicular to the channel. These features might redirect the flow, acting like unseen walls under the ice, but even this doesn't fully account for the dynamic changes in flow rate. And then there are the stranger hypotheses. Fringe, yes, but persistent. One theory posits that George VI Sound may sit atop a deep magnetic anomaly, a buried feature from the planet's formative years that affects glacial movement through electromagnetic interaction. There's little direct evidence to support this, but the idea draws upon known features in other parts of Antarctica, like the Wilkes Land gravity anomaly, where the Earth's crust dips in a way that remains unexplained. Others suggest the influence of tectonic activity that hasn't yet been properly recorded. Could slow tremors or deep crustal movements beneath the Antarctic peninsula be shifting the ground itself, subtly disturbing the ice above? Seismic instruments in the region have registered low-frequency tremors, but the source and regularity remain uncertain. And then, of course, there's the persistent speculation about artificial influences. Some have pointed to the unique geometry of the flow paths, patterns that appear almost engineered when viewed from above. Linear alignments, symmetrical bends, shapes that don't seem to form naturally. Fringe theorists have proposed everything from hidden bases to ancient structures buried beneath the ice, relics of civilizations unknown to history. Is that likely? Not according to mainstream science. But in a continent where less than 1% of the subsurface has been physically explored, even the most seasoned researchers admit, we don't know what lies beneath. One of the more fascinating observations comes not from satellite data, but from time-lapse imaging taken over the course of several years. In one particular sector of George VI Sound, the ice does something strange. It appears to breathe. Not literally, of course. But the ice shelf bulges and contracts over time, almost like a heartbeat. This phenomenon isn't unique to George VI. It's been observed in other ice shelves, often linked to tides and internal meltwater pressure. But here, the rhythm is irregular. Sometimes it happens every few months. Other times it vanishes for years. Some glaciologists believe it may be tied to pressure releases from subglacial reservoirs, pockets of water that build beneath the ice and suddenly drain, altering the flow above. These lakes are known to exist beneath Antarctica and have been documented under the Whillans and Mercer ice streams. But George VI Sound remains relatively uncharted below the surface. Drilling is logistically difficult. Crevasses, unstable ice, and unpredictable weather have delayed deep ice core missions time and again. What lies beneath may remain concealed for decades, and still, the ice moves, sideways, in pulses, against gravity, as if directed by a script we can't yet read. Is it geological coincidence? A product of hidden lakes and tides, playing out in a dance of physics too complex to fully capture? Or is the ice of George VI Sound responding to something else entirely? Something deeper, older, and as yet, unknown. Whatever the cause, the patterns remain. They're not imagined. They're not theoretical. They're there, etched into the surface, drawn across the satellite maps, repeating year after year. And so we are left to wonder, what moves the ice beneath George VI Sound? And what else might it be trying to tell us?